Is it better to be feared or respected? And I say, is it too much to ask for both? With that in mind, I humbly present the crown jewel of Stark Industries' Freedom Line. It's the first missile system to incorporate our proprietary repulsor technology. They say the best weapon is one you never have to fire. I respectfully disagree. I prefer the weapon you only have to fire once. That's how Dad did it. That's how America does it. And it's worked out pretty well so far. Find an excuse to let one of these off the chain, and I personally guarantee you the bad guys won't even want to come out of their caves. For your consideration, the Jericho.
The old Hollywood formula was still printing money, but the future was creeping in, just not where you'd expect. Number 10, Prince Caspian proved The Chronicles of Narnia was no Harry Potter with diminishing returns that it would effectively kill the franchise. At number 9, WALL-E turned a near-silent love story between two robots into box office gold, out-earning films packed with stars, explosions, and endless dialogue. And at number 8, Marvel, via Paramount, quietly launched in earnest the beginnings of its cinematic empire that would dominate the next 2 decades while barely making the top 10. Meanwhile, at number 7, Bond's latest reboot was already struggling. At number 6, Madagascar, Escape to Africa, proved that in the early aughts, even mid-tier DreamWorks sequels were unstoppable. Speaking of unstoppable, and speaking of dreams, it's teamwork that makes the dream work. And I have the most popular team in all of adults who podcast about children's entertainment. Robert Yaniz Jr., who has joined me for more of these years than not for this decade.
It's true.
And a man whose entire online identity is shaped by his hatred for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. DW Lundberg.
I knew that was coming.
Lundberg, we're going to spare you a little bit up front here because you have the beginnings or endings of potential laryngitis.
That's true.
And yet you still, in the kindness of your heart, said, I'm going to do binge movies.
The most talkative podcast.
Yes.
The most yappy. It's a big old yap sesh, right, Robert?
Absolutely.
Now, I've already talked about Iron Man, I feel like 12 times.
Oh, okay.
And I have already talked about WALL-E with Robert in a special COVID-era episode about Pixar. It was sponsored episode at the time. And so we had to bring on another person who could have some perspective. And I know Robert has talked about, you did the MCU, didn't you, in one of your franchise detours?
I haven't, because that would be like, I don't know, a few years of my life, I feel like, at this point.
What, we're up to chapter 35? Is that
I
what
think,
Brave New World is?
yeah.
Jeez.
I don't think you really need to go past Endgame.
No.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's a hard out for people who are just like, I'm over this.
Yeah. There's some good stuff in there, despite what Lundberg says, in between. Maybe not phase 4 or 5 or wherever the fuck we are now. Although I'm liking Daredevil so far. We'll see. I'm a sucker, though, for Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio. So.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, without much further ado, let's dive into a movie that, for some reason, is 4.5 hours long.
Oh, geez.
Fills the entire length of its runtime.
Holy shit.
Is The Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian. I've only seen it for the first time for the show. Currently has a 66% on Rotten Tomatoes.
In 2005, C.S. Lewis's beloved masterpiece came to life.
Where do you suppose we are?
Where do you think?
journey of a lifetime
It's Aslan!
continues.
Who are you?
I am Prince Caspian.
From Walt Disney Pictures and Walden Media. The Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian, directed by Andrew Adamson.
Prince Caspian was directed by Andrew Adamson with a screenplay by Andrew Adamson, Christopher Marcus, and Stephen McFeely. Speaking of the golden years of the MCU, these guys pivoted from this to essentially the best written movies the MCU's ever produced.
Yep.
Oh, no.
Based on Prince Caspian by C.S. Lewis. His film was released May 16th, 2008 in the United States and 26 June 2008 in the United Kingdom. On a budget of $225 million, it made $419.6 million at the worldwide box office. Disney learns the hard way that one trip through that wardrobe was more than enough.
I had the Chronicles of Narnia shoulders on with nary a lion, a witch, nor a wardrobe in sight.
And I've got 4 posh British children are whisked away again to a magical land where thought and theology are set aside for a generic rehashing of all things Arthurian legend, Lord of the Rings, and The Wizard of Oz.
Okay. I have a couple of... It's mixed, my point of view on this movie. Never seen it before. Saw the first one in theaters back when it came out, and I just really was not feeling this era of fantasy. I didn't even really like the Lord of the Rings films at the time, which Robert and I have talked about with Kat on previous episodes. And
Great episodes, by the way. Not jealous at all that I was not part of those.
those two crushed it. So,
Yeah,
Lundberg, you're going to have to live up to Catherine Gonzalez's
oh no,
quality with laryngitis.
Yeah, that's the double whammy.
That's right. So this was the first time I've seen this. I was stunned when this movie started by how, in my opinion, phenomenal this movie looks. The fact that they were in real locations, the fact that actual practical sets were built for, the ruins of their castle, the fact that the horses that they rode on were real animals, the fact that they still had men in costumes and suits. And yeah, there is digital otters that talk and things like that. The fact that, Peter Dinklage and Warwick Davis are in makeup effects and not whatever bizarro Snow White live action CGI devil may cry bullshit is out there. I thought, man, this movie looks good. And I understand that that's really more of a commentary on the decline of the skill of filmmaking in the last 25 years than it is necessarily this movie. Because this, at the time, I saw trailers for it, looked like what movies look like. Nothing remarkable, if anything, kind of whatever. But I thought it looked phenomenal. I think somehow this story is meatier and much more kind of mythological and even more fantastical than The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I know that for some people, this is their favorite book in the series. I haven't read any of the books, but I know a lot of people that say that this is the best book. And yet this movie is extremely less interesting, very boring, not well acted at all. This is a painfully acted film. And then we get to maybe, I would say, the last, 45 minutes or so. And if the other 2 hours of this film had been at the level of maybe the last 45 minutes of just a sort of interest and intrigue and plot development, then maybe I would have liked the film better. Look, I will also say this. I think this movie's got a lot of heavy lifting to do because the Narnia books and this story, it's like, okay, I don't know that it does a good job. Maybe the books do a better job, but the idea that these kids left, they're only slightly older in our world, but 1,000 years have passed in Narnia. So it's basically an entirely different civilization, but they return to it as basically their mythology in the eyes of these people. And there's this whole other group of humans that have taken over Narnia, and like all this, like there's a lot of palace intrigue and proto Game of Thrones kind of shit going on here. And the whole time, and I hate to say this because of what it means about movies, and I don't even know that this would work anymore, because I think TV is also a dead medium. But the whole time I was like, this really needed to be a miniseries. Just this book alone kind of feels like it needs to be a television show or a 6-episode miniseries. But that's I wouldn't like it more than I did, just because it looks like an actual motion picture. It looks like a fucking film, man. There are costumes and like shout out to the costumers and production designers and the crew and even some of the cinematography. I was like, wow, great job, everybody. It just so happens to suck. So, but this shit still means something to me, man. So I hate to dog on a movie that does a lot of the things right that modern movies don't even bother doing anymore. Robert, let's start with you because Lundberg is half dead.
I'm taking my pills.
I'm coming in a very similar place to you, Jason. Like I read the first book when I was a kid. I saw the first movie when it came out, and then I was like, I'm good. I don't need this. I have Harry Potter. I had Lord of the Rings. I don't need a third one.
Wait, have you always been a heathen? Is what you always rejected God?
I read the book when I was. I'm describing my reaction to the movie.
You're like,
the first movie.
I want the spirit of witchcraft in my life. I don't want Aslan. Get out of here, Jesus. Get out of here, Holy Spirit. I've got witchcraft now.
There you go. Exactly.
You're right.
Yeah, you figured me out.
Right.
So I didn't see this either. In fact, this is one of those franchises that I keep forgetting exists because it kind of got lost in that shuffle. I feel like the first movie came out was a pretty big hit.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the second one was this big a hit, and I'm watching it for the first time for this episode. And then the third one wasn't even made by Disney. Like the rights shifted over to Fox, which is now Disney, ironically enough.
There's a third. There's a third one.
There's a third one after this.
Don Cheddar, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
Wow.
then now Greta Gerwig is making Narnia movies for Netflix.
Yeah.
That's what she's doing post Barbie. So we're gonna get hours of Narnia content coming soon to streaming service near you.
Now, Robert, I got a question for you. Should a liberal feminist be making one of our great white Christian male novel series of all time? Go woke, go broke, Netflix. We're in the post-woke era, America. It's time to do away with this. Give that book to a white Christian male. What is Kevin Sorbo doing, and why is he not directing that miniseries? Is Kevin Sorbo going to be Aslan?
I was just about to say, he'll be Aslan.
Yeah.
There you go. So I don't know. I appreciate a lot of what it was trying to do, but it does very much feel like, does your kid like Harry Potter? Are they not quite mature enough for Lord of the Rings? Here's something to tide you over. And that's pretty much what this movie feels like story-wise. And even doing research for this episode, the book apparently is like half flashback, like half the story of Prince Caspian, and the 4 kids aren't even in it. For like most of the book.
That's right.
And watching the movie now, I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why so much of this movie is just the main characters kind of milling about. What should we do? I don't know. Let's go this way.
It's a lot of milling about. That's a great way to put it. It's a lot of milling about. It's like, and I thought that the kids came off really good in the first movie.
Yeah.
Especially the little one, Lucy, I think, and you really kind of care about her. I will say our boy Edmund gets a fucking glow up from the first one. This one, you're like, okay, finally, this guy isn't a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
But then the cool one from the first movie, he's the fucking idiot.
Yeah.
And then the other one, the older sister, does nothing but mill about. Nothing. She barely has dialogue in this movie. And then at the end, it's like, well, there was this whole romance. You're going, you didn't film it. It's not in the movie. You have a 2-hour and 45-minute movie. You still couldn't bother to develop that character. Instead, we just had a lot of time. And again, it's not as if like, well, she wasn't on screen. She was on screen. She was just silently milling about.
And it dangles a lot of the threads of what people responded to in the first one.
Yes.
It dangles Aslan. There's a moment where you're like, oh, thank God we're getting Tilda Swinton in this movie. And then the movie's like, nope, just kidding.
I thought that part's kind of cool.
I thought that was,
Yeah.
it was. And
Probably
like
the
you were
best thing in
saying,
the whole movie. Yeah.
Oh.
like you said, the last 30 to 45 minutes, like I was like, oh, now we're cooking. Now we got something going.
Yeah,
I'm
they're-
actually
honestly,
interested in this.
It's
somewhat.
not bad. The last 30, 40 minutes is not bad. You're like, what the fuck? Like, I even liked, they were doing this really interesting thing. I don't even know how to describe it, but like when the hot brother, both
Peter?
hot and hot headed, what's his name?
Peter.
Peter.
is his
Yeah.
name.
When Peter's fighting, the other dude, the bad
villain,
the bad
Miraz.
the bad
Miraz, yeah.
Spaniard.
Yeah, essentially.
Well, I made
They-
such an
they-
impact that we can't even remember his name. Great.
They did this really interesting thing where it wasn't handheld, but like the camera went super low and like it was almost not quite high frame rate. I don't know what the hell it was, but like he rolls towards the camera and the camera kind of dolly zooms in at the same time. And I was like, that's a really cool effect. And then they cut it too quick. I'm like, and then there's like a couple of really clever, interesting camera tricks in that fight where I go, where was this energy
hmm
the rest of this movie? Not that I needed the entire movie to be an action scene movie, but there is theoretically a lot of action sequences in the film.
Yeah.
It's just that most of them are very lethargic.
Yeah.
And you're like, I get that we want to build to this climactic battle. It is no Lord of the Rings. It is no, whatever you come on, man, help me. The Helm's Deep. It is no Helm's Deep.
Oh yeah.
But it's not bad. And that's the thing about it. You're like, I think you kind of could have done this. So either the story doesn't translate to film, but again, I don't know that because I haven't read the books, or they've misunderstood something about this story. It just doesn't work. And I'm just looking at all of this lush production.
Mhm.
And again, that last 40 minutes and going, what went wrong here?
I think had they just committed to, first of all, had they had a better actor as Caspian,
Oh my
I think.
God.
because
Ben Barnes,
Ben
yeah.
Barnes in this is, I'm watching the whole movie. I'm like, is he just doing Inigo Montoya? And I found out he based his accent on Inigo
Are you
Montoya
serious?
from The Princess
Yeah.
Bride. I'm like, yep, that checks out.
Oh my God. That's a fucking satire, man. Mandy Patinkin wasn't trying to make a real character. What the fuck?
I think if they had a better Caspian and then they focused on Caspian as the main character, I think this could have worked. And you had the kids as supporting roles sort of coming in part of the way through it, maybe.
I totally understand that that's like a challenge because they're wanting they're like you said, they're chasing their Harry Potter, they're chasing Lord of the Rings. Those 3 kids or 4 kids are successful in the first movie. And so you then go, okay, well, if this is a franchise, we can't have these kids not in it and just be like, well, part 2 is 1,500 years in the future of Narnia. But the kids will eventually show up way late, but they'll still be kids, but it's the future. Like,
Right.
I totally understand why they made the decisions they did, but you can't try to be faithful to the book and also fundamentally change how Narnia works.
Mhm.
That's kind of the point of it too. That's also like kind of the point of the absence of Aslan, and how as this society has developed, he has, much like Christ has in Robert's life, faded to the mist of time into the background. But it's for somebody who loves Christ, Lundberg. What do you think?
Well, these books were huge for me growing up. Like
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings never really engaged me so much. I know that's kind of hypocrisy or heresy, because Tolkien mostly wrote that for the language, right? It wasn't mostly for the story or whatever. So that
They're
he's
very,
trying to
very
create-
dense too.
Yeah, dense. So Chronicles of Narnia, again, it's more of a kid's book, and so it's easier to understand. So I grew up reading these books, and yeah, people call it like an allegory, but it's not, because it only kind of hits at some, like in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Yeah, you got Aslan, who is Jesus. You have Edmund, who's basically Judas, right?
Yeah, right.
Except Judas killed himself. Like, you can't do that in a kid. So it's just giving you like these instances to kind of associate itself with Christian beliefs. But the thing is, when they chased after this, I mean, you guys talk about milling about. That's the main problem with this is, yeah, they have Lord of the Rings. Yeah, you got Harry Potter. It's Disney going, what can we do? What series of novels or what can we adapt? What high fantasy adventure can we adapt to kind of compete with these? And they found these Chronicles of Narnia things because, again, they're kid books, right? But I don't think the books were made, or even Lord of the Rings wasn't written to be made into films, right? But because Peter Jackson is such a great filmmaker and such a great writer, he was able to make it cinematic instead of just literary. The problem with the Chronicles of Narnia is they're what did you call them? They're not really allegories. They're mostly supposals. They're what ifs. So they're transplanting these things. So Aslan, he's in a different world. Like at the end of this movie, he basically tells the people, I am known by a different name in this other world. You have to find me, right? So C.S. Lewis wrote these books not to hit you over the head with Christian mythology. They were just in there. Like, I don't think you should force Christianity on people. You should just maybe live by example, and that maybe they'll follow it, maybe they won't. It's their choice. You have to make these personal choices.
That sort of thinking is from a bygone era.
It is.
Are you not living in 2025? We have to force Christianity on people. Otherwise, the gays will have human rights.
That's true. Well, this is Utah, so it's a bubble. So so we don't actually live the same as anyway.
Right. And let me tell you something, folks. Yeah. Every good Christian buys a Tesla. I have it on good authority. You don't see the pearly gates unless you're driving a Tesla.
Oh, jeez.
It's a prerequisite for salvation.
I'm in Florida, so I must be ready to go. I must be all set.
Yeah.
You don't have. Well, here's the thing,
Constant
Robert.
Cybertrucks.
It's right. You don't even have to own it. You just have to lease it.
There you go.
Yeah.
For a lifetime.
That's right.
So again, if you're trying to turn these books into Lord of the Rings, the problem with the books is that the kids are not in every book.
That's right.
Robert, you're absolutely right. In Prince Caspian, it's basically them sitting down on a campfire and saying, tell us the whole history of what's going on. And they're not in it for the first half. So again, if you're trying to make it Harry Potter, you have to change these things and make it work. And it doesn't work. Like, I get, like, looking at it, yeah, it looks fine, right? The note I have is it kind of looks like a BBC miniseries. I don't think it looks entirely cinematic, but it looks fine. Like you said, there's costumes, there's actual locations, there's actual sets. It doesn't look fake. Like the Badger looks great, Aslan looks great. They integrate themselves with the surroundings perfectly. But again, it doesn't. I just don't think it's adaptable as a movie. And so it doesn't work trying to reformat it. And again, you mentioned Marcus and McFeely. I've got, controversially as the MCU hater, I've got huge problems with the movies that they wrote, like not debilitating problems. But when I saw their names, I was like, oh no, not these guys, because they set up stuff and they're good at writing character stuff, but they're not good at, to me, with the Captain Americas or whatever, they're not good at really following through on a lot of those themes. And so again, all the stuff that's in this movie it's there, but they don't dive into what you guys are talking. They don't dive into the idea of losing faith and finding your faith again. That's there, but they're more interested in the battle stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's the main focus. And the note that when I put this on, I watched this, a couple nights ago, and I put this on thinking, oh, this is a good kids movie. I'll start it like maybe in 2 hours before I have to go to bed. Like, that's fine. And I booted up on Disney Plus, and I'm like, this is 2.5 hours?
I was dumbfounded, man. I can't fucking believe this.
Yeah, and you're talking about the milling about, like with the characters, they don't have anything to do in the book. So they're trying to make them do things, and it just doesn't work. They give Peter like the idea that he's so overconfident and he's so brazen that he doesn't see acid, but it doesn't. Well,
that's anywhere. Okay. I took it as he was very much like the Apostle Peter, where he's hot tempered and he's quick to pull up the sword and cut off his enemy's ear. Right. That's kind of his downfall. And I thought, okay, well, there's your kind of, if Edmund was Judas in the first one, then he's your Peter, right? In this one, and then the women don't exist, so they don't. And little Lucy, who is I think her name's Lucy, right?
Yep,
Lucy?
Yep, Lucy.
She's like the standout of that first movie, and it's like, well, she's got that little magic elixir, so she'll do that 2 or 3 times, and then and I and it was I don't know, man. Maybe you could cut this down to like a hour 15, and it'd be like pretty fine kids movie, or something, because to me, it's just like when there are certain scenes that when they work, they work, and you go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But it's just a long slog between those scenes that work. It's not horrible. It's not pull your hair out and go, this is garbage. This is slop. It's boring. It's the bare minimum of storytelling. It's like a story is being told, but there's not much more here.
When you compare it to Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson's films are so engaging, and I know the characters' names, I understand what their places and what their goals are. I had no idea what anybody was going. I didn't know what the politics or the upheaval. I had no idea. So yeah, you basically could have started it from the battle part, and I would have been just as caught up. Like I didn't understand any of that. But the note that I had when they start the battle, when it's Peter fighting again, I can't remember his name, the other king who's no threat. He's hardly a threat. Like I didn't buy him. I wasn't threatened by him. But when they have the one-on-one battle, I look down, I'm like, there's an hour left of this still?
That's
and
crazy.
It seems like when the climax, and then when they were done, and then does the whole thing where his subordinate
that's
stabs
the thing
him.
that threw me off, because the first he's got maybe 3 lines in this whole movie, and the palace intrigue scene where they're all the different thrones, all the kingdoms are gathered together.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, ever since, Caspian the Ninth or whatever died, you've essentially made yourself king of all of the realm or whatever. And he's obviously killed a bunch of the other people. And I thought some of that was like, okay, that's okay. I get it. It's kind of cool. And just you're showing us and not telling us, because he walks in, there's like all of these empty thrones, and these guys are kind of squabbling amongst themselves, or what are they going to do with this tyrant? And I kind of like the fact that he was so weak as a tyrant in a way, because most tyrants are weaklings. They're worms. They're wannabe strong men. They do horrible things, but they are not genuine tough guys or smart, or they're just craven. So I kind of like that. But then he seems to be sort of arguing for their independence. Like, we got to get rid of this guy because he's obviously doing shady stuff behind our back, and we're going to be next.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't read him necessarily as another tyrant in wait or a heel. And then so when he has that turn where he kills him, I thought, oh, okay, that's kind of makes sense. And then he's like, them kids killed him. I was like, wait, what? Like, what's his end game there?
Yeah. And I looked down at my notes at that point. I'm like, now there's still half an hour left of this. What is happening? Like,
yeah, he just becomes another bad guy that we have another hour.
Yeah.
For that. Now Aslan has to come and kick the second bad guy's ass. and some of that stuff is cool. Like when she appears in the bridge and she's got her little needle, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. I like that image. I'm probably going to steal it for a future movie that I write. And then, then Aslan appears beside her, and like some of the pacing and timing of that was off, but like, that's kind of cool. And then, the closest,
the trees come alive at one point.
The ends, the end's great. I'm glad.
That was cool.
The water spirit,
the water spirit, which definitely looks like an anthropomorphized Jesus.
Well, yeah,
starts like that, like
John the Baptist. It was a
there you go. It didn't look bad, but it looked. Considering this movie's almost 20 years old or 30.
Almost.
But
we've seen it before. We've seen all of this before, and we've seen it so much better and so much more engaging. Like the whole time I was like, I would rather be watching Lord of the Rings. What, like, it's like a kiddified version. And again,
that's what it is.
That's the book.
Yeah, 100%.
But it does, again, I've been engaged. I guess there's a difference between Peter Jackson directing it and Andrew Adams, and the guy that directed Shrek directing this. It's not the same.
Right.
He doesn't have the same, like him talking about, I'm more confident with the action scenes this time. I'm like, well, that's great, but I don't understand the strategies. I don't understand, like,
did
why
he say
you're
that
doing this.
Himself?
Yes, he said that.
Well, I mean, that shows, because I think some of the action scenes are pretty good. And
more
it's
developed than the first one, right?
Yeah, but everything in between, he's worse at.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it just didn't. Nothing is committed to enough. Nothing is evil enough. Nothing is exciting enough.
I think Robert's right, and I think you're right, since you had read the book. I think the real issue, I think this one probably just comes down to screenplay. They didn't get it where it needed to be, and so when you put $225 million into it, it's gonna look pretty good, or at least $225 million used to make things look pretty good. It's going, it's only pretty good, and it holds up reasonably well visually 20 some years later. And here we are, but everything in between is kind of a waste of time. So
yeah,
I give this one a 6 out of 10, and it's the worst of the week for me.
Rob.
Yeah, I'm flip flopping between this and something else, but
I got a feeling I know what that something else is.
I'll go worst of the week as well. I think it's some of these movies on this this 5 is Razor's Edge. It was like not bad, but not great, like watchable,
this is
but
some
like
watchable, mediocre
passable.
shit.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll go number 5 for this with a 6.1. It does have Peter Dinklage and Warwick Davis in it, so
that's pretty great. Yeah,
they carried that pretty well. So it was fun to see both of them in this.
Yeah. Again, it's my worst of the week. I think I've got it as a 5. It's not horrible. It just did not. It's listless, and it's like you said, it's mediocre. It just kind of sits there. So there's so many more things I could have been doing with my time.
yeah, I understood. Thanks for being positive about binge movies. Okay, it's time to move on to a movie we've already talked about. So Lundberg's going to have to carry this with what is left of his vocal cords, and I'm going to lay out for Rob too, because I didn't let him talk the first time we talked about it. We're talking about Wall-E, which has a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wall-E has a good job, a loyal pet, and he just met the girl of his dreams. The only thing missing is a little adventure. On June 27, Disney Pixar takes you to the edge of the galaxy.
Just a trim? You look gorgeous.
And beyond. Disney Pixar's Wall-E.
Wall-E was directed by Andrew Stanton, with a screenplay by Andrew Stanton, Jim Reardon, story by Andrew Stanton and Pete Docter. Film was released June 27, 2008, on a budget of $180 million. It made $532.5 million at the worldwide box office. A future humanity crippled by obesity and AI slop leaves Earth in the hands of a trash compactor who develops the sentience and love that escapes them.
I have Hello Dolly inspires 2 robots to not only fall in love, but give humanity a second chance at life on Earth.
I've got a plucky garbage collecting robot falls in love with a cantankerous probe robot and pursues her across the galaxy, inadvertently influencing countless atrophied humans to get their shit together and return to the Earth they abandoned centuries ago.
One, I thought you were going to say, read yours again, Robert. I want to hear it again.
Sure. I said, Hello Dolly inspires 2 robots to not only fall in love, but give humanity a second chance at life on Earth.
I see. When you said not only fall in love, but I thought you were going to say fuck.
I mean, that too.
She is a probe robot.
Yeah.
Where's she
pegging,
probing, Robert?
Pegging, yeah.
That's right.
Pegging in a Pixar movie, great.
I don't think Wall-E's particular, to be honest.
I've seen his holes. I haven't seen hers.
He's got a lot of orifices. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Look, man, this movie is endearing. I think the best sequence in the entire film is the near silent sequence that Robert and I waxed poetic about last time we talked about this. I don't give a fuck about that cruise ship in space. Although, and maybe I said this last time, so maybe I'm repeating gags. But since we recorded that episode, Disney has both spent and lost $1 billion fucking on a fake cruise ship, spaceship that went fucking nowhere but a parking lot in Orlando, Florida.
That's right.
And the best thing that came out of it was a Jenny Nicholson video.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Wow. Yes.
And quite frankly, that's the best thing that's come out of Disney Star Wars.
Wow.
Is that Jenny Nicholson fucking
Good
video.
Call. Yes. Excellent call.
How a company spends billions of dollars
Holy shit.
to destroy the only profitable franchise that never had a miss.
Oh.
Never had, even the shitty prequels made billions of dollars. How do you fucking lose money and not sell toys? I know it's not entirely Kathleen Kennedy's fault. No. So there's going to be, this is not a Disney adjacent film like the one we just watched and talked about, Prince Caspian, which I can barely remember the name of. This is Pixar, and Pixar is in its bag. and kind of in many ways keeping Disney afloat in the early 2000s, is they're just kind of fumble fucking their way through. I don't know what the fuck they're doing, price gouging, starting, but yeah, look, this movie is great. It's obviously my number one for the week compared to every other thing that's on here because it's an all-time classic. It's an 8.5 out of 10. Rob, what do you got to say?
No, I mean, we talked about it before. This is easily one of the best Pixar films that they've produced. It's I think one of perhaps the best examples of them being like, what if insert creature here had feelings? The whole approach to storytelling that they did for the first 10, 15 years of their life with bugs and, emotions and everything else.
I got a pitch for you.
Best version. Yes, go for it.
What if Republicans had feelings?
I mean, I'm not. The movie doesn't specifically say what Fred Willard's party is, but I mean, he seems pretty. He seems pretty chicken shit to me.
He seems the kind of guy that would turn the White House lawn into a used car dealership, doesn't he?
Well, and essentially the entire expedition sponsored by what, Walmart?
Amazon? Yeah,
Walmart or Sam's Club. It's basically that's the whole vibe.
One of the few bad reviews this podcast has ever gotten is said the show was too political, and I just want to take the time to say to that person who's probably not listening anymore, and to anybody who feels that way, and in particular to a big fan of the show, and I hate to say this to somebody who's been a big fan and a big supporter for a long time. His name is Jeff Bezos. And I want to tell him to die and go to hell, but first eat shit.
That's how you talk to your fans.
That's how I talk to my fans who are in the process of turning my planet into a fucking trash heap that only AI trash cans will be able to live on and find love on. I'm a single man in 2025 trying to find love. And I'd be better off if I was a fucking robot.
Yep.
Sorting through Amazon boxes because we're all so fucking addicted to Prime. I'm real keyed up, guys. I'm real keyed up.
That name is somebody we're probably going to come back to with one of the franchise films we're going to be talking about here in a little bit.
Hey, man, it's called seeding. Come on. I'm doing the weave.
Very clever. Yeah.
All right, Robert, I cut you off for the 100th time. Go ahead.
It's all good. No, this is, I mean, it obviously, even more so now than in 2008, plays like a cautionary tale. Humanity sitting around on lounge chairs, lunch in a cup. Autopilot is literally the villain of this, but also metaphorically like the whole problem of what happened with humanity, with the human race. Just everybody got so complacent, which feels more resonant now than it even did in 2008.
Doesn't it?
I think it really does. The fact that everybody's on screens the whole time in this movie too. They're like, I didn't know we had a pool, including the children. They start the children out. A is for, Axiom, your home sweet home. B is for By and Large. And Sigourney Weaver is the voice of the future, which I can get behind that.
Yeah.
Yep.
M is for meta.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. But it also is,
Mother.
Gorgeous to look at. The Thomas Newman score is amazing. It's just a timeless story, and I think still one of the high bars of Pixar. It's also my first of the week with a 9.3.
You know what's sad to me here, guys? The fantasy element to this is not that Earth will be left in ruins, left to AI to manage. That's going to happen. The fantasy element that we couldn't have predicted in 2008 is that after having created and giving birth to AI, we will not be relaxing on cruise ships in space. The oligarchs might. The techno-autocrats may. We will either be dead or in techno-feudal slave camps. And we all laugh at that because it seems so ridiculous and so alarmist to say. Except for the fact that the number one philosopher who is currently influencing this administration, its vice president, Elon Musk, is a man by the name of Curtis Yarvin. And Curtis Yarvin has been writing to Silicon Valley tech bros for over 25 years under Melvis Molebug about something called the Butterfly Revolution, in which the state as we know it today and democracy must be systematically dismantled through a process called RAGE, which is retire all government employees. And he says you go into the federal government and you fire everybody and you offer them buyouts for their contracts, and then you dismantle every form of government bureaucracy, effectively crippling the nation. Then you divide the assets of that nation to CEO lords who will be able to rule over feudal states. You'll be able to carve up nation states, get rid of it, and you'll have network states. And then these CEOs will answer to a board of shareholders only. And then everybody else will only have whatever rights are part of the terms and service agreement of that network state. And that none of us will own any property. We will just live on the land of the state. So we'll have Amazon land, which might be, parts of California and into Canada and, all this other sort of stuff. And that sounds really fucking crazy, because it is, but it's also a viewpoint that the vice president of the United States currently espouses and has been espousing for over 5 years. And you have Elon Musk, who is in our government, effectively enacting RAGE, retire all government employees. He just changed it to Doge, DOGE, instead of RAGE. So, your asses, my asses, we ain't going to be on no cruise ship getting fat in space. We're going to be getting real skinny, real quick, living in the garbage heap. Express elevator to hell, going down. All right, come back from that, Lundberg. Get it funny.
Good luck.
Maybe I should just give the grade and then move on. So, wow, to bring this back up, I think I'll tell you guys, not to make this a super long conversation, but I'll tell you guys what I really liked about this movie, and then I want to ask a question and see if we can kind of figure this out. So, this is not my favorite Pixar movie, but it's up there. I think like the first 40 minutes, like that, the visual language, like you're talking about, the silent, and we're getting everything. It's just breathtaking to watch.
Yeah, it is.
And Eve is introduced, and we get, because he's got the big puppy dog eyes and he works a menial job and he's like so positive all the time. The design of him is just gorgeous too. Ben Burt, whatever, and Stanton, how they designed him. He's just a very likable, lovable character. I love that this is an example of the flat arc storytelling where Wally doesn't change, but he changes everybody around him. I love that idea. I love that he's helping everybody get back in touch with their humanity, not because he's trying, just because by the very definition of just being him. Like he's just, his pluckiness and his attitude is just building everybody back up. And yeah, it is confusing that I'm always confused by the Fred Willard. How do we go from actual humans to these blobs? Like, I'm not quite sure of the aesthetics of that. But like all the great sci-fi, this poses, like you talked about, Jason, if you're thinking of that, it's fantastic that this movie made you think about that stuff. It's not just a simple cartoon, right?
Yeah. While still being so empathetic and like full of romance and love and heart and humanity, and it's a kind of a, it pulls at the heartstrings. It goes to that thing that when Pixar's at its best, and this is certainly that era, that they did better than anybody. You feel for this little thing,
Yeah. And so that's the thing. I mean, I think I agree with you too. As soon as they get on that ship, it kind of becomes more and more conventional, even though there's still a lot of joy to it. We see how it affects everybody. You really feel it when Wally gets shocked or kind of he's broken, and Eve has to pick up the pace and take over the story and bring him back and inspire everybody, and has the captain going after Otto or whatever, and has the also spake Zarathustra, the 2001 thing in there. So all that is great, right? And before I asked the question, my wife, as I was talking, this is her favorite Pixar movie. So I asked her, what is it about this movie that you like? And before I said, this is what she said. She says, well, if you think about it, this is like one of those Hallmark Christmas movies. So, and I looked it up. I looked up the plot. This is what it says. Like a typical Hallmark Christmas movie plot features a city woman returning to her small hometown for the holidays.
That's right.
where she
Meaning
meets a
simpleton.
handsome local love interest and discovers the true meaning of Christmas while facing a conflict that is resolved by the end.
Oh my
resulting in a
God.
heartwarming happy ending.
100%.
I laughed and she's like, "What's so funny?" I'm like, "Because you're so smart. Like, I can't believe, you know." And it was just
That's
great.
spot on, man.
Isn't it? Just
Yeah.
great. Just great.
Tell
So-
Mrs. Lundy that the
Okay.
folks over at Binge Movies want her on the next time instead of you.
Okay. She's going to do a bunch of yelling.
Or maybe with you.
Oh, that could be it. If I
And
can
then
get
the
her.
episode is we take 5 films that you hate and she likes, and then we just air out your family grievances on the podcast for my downloads.
Right.
There you go.
I'll talk to her about that as soon as we're off this. Anyway.
Pitch it.
So my question, and again, I'm giving this a 9. It's also my best of the week. It's not quite Incredibles or Toy Story, but it's top 5 Pixar.
Yeah.
My question for you guys, and this is something that's just been fascinating watching the downfall of Disney or whatever, all that stuff. Pixar had their finger on the pulse for it seems like the longest time.
Real
Any movie
long
that they
time.
made, Toy Story, Monsters, Finding Nemo, Wall-E, like any of these movies, people love them as a collective group. Like everybody engaged with these movies in a way that was that's why Pixar was magic, right?
Mhm.
What happened when now a Pixar movie comes out and now people are conflicted over them and only a handful of people like Soul, only a handful of people like Turning Red? What do you guys, so I can rest my voice, what do you guys think has happened with Pixar?
I defer to Robert because this is like more of his area of expertise, and we've kind of touched on this before a couple of times, Robert.
Yeah, I think they got very complacent. Their films got very derivative. I think Inside Out obviously is a highlight,
Mhm.
but then from there it's The Good Dinosaur, which is a low bar for them.
Right.
And then it was a lot of prequels, sequels, spin-offs with very rare original storytelling being involved in there, and even those feel more conventional.
Mhm.
Onward feels very derivative of a lot of other stories. Even Soul feels like, well, what if we do Inside Out, but it's your soul instead of your emotions? And it's like, okay, like a sidestep kind of in that direction. Lightyear being the low bar, I think, for that whole thing, where you're like, well, why does this exist? It's like they just stopped, I think, trying, and they just kept trying, taking what was perceived by the stockholders and the executives to be safe bets, which I think has really backfired because it's really tarnished the brand over the last 10, 15 years, I guess.
No, I mean, I think that's it. I think too, I mean, I'm not going to challenge your thesis, but the last time Rob was on, do you remember what Pixar movie we talked about, Rob?
Not exactly.
Cars.
Refresh me.
2006.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe not the last time you were on, but the last time we talked about a Pixar movie.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No.
And that is in the middle of their golden era. And you're already like, this is at best, fine cartoon. Right. This is some Don Bluth shit, man. And not the good. This is like,
I was gonna say, don't besmirch the name of Don Bluth.
well, this is somewhere between
Troll in Central Park.
Troll in
Thumbelina
Central
kind
Park.
of vibe. Yeah.
We're back.
Wow.
That kind of stuff. It's not Cats Don't Dance. That wasn't him, I don't think, but still, it's not
Might as
Cats
well
Don't
be.
Dance, but it's closer to We're Back than it
But
is.
it's not
Land Before Time.
Rockadoodle.
Yeah, it's not Rockadoodle. It's not Rockadoodle.
Let's not go there.
God damn. But it's also not Land Before Time. It might be Land Before Time 3, that kind of thing. And so they've already had some clunkers. They already had a clunker. It just made a shit ton of money.
And sold a lot of toys.
And sold a shit ton of toys. And I honestly think that hit them. Not that Toy Story hadn't sold a bunch of toys. Not that they hadn't done some sequels of Toy Story. But I think that Cars movie, that shit was everywhere. The merchandising for that was everywhere. It was so popular with 5 and unders, 8 and unders, let's say. And the quality, the critical prestige didn't really matter because I think they made so much money off of Cars, hand over fist, that they weren't chasing Toy Story 2 or some of these other, Wall-E, they started to chase cars.
Cars 2.
Cars too. Yeah. They were chasing, what can we make that's going to be a great attraction that we can put into one of these parks that we can sell families magic bands to, that they also have to buy an upgraded lightning pass for where they download Genie Plus and then also get the quick pass, lightning pass, Genie Plus day one subscription. It like everything else, it's become about, like Rob said, we got to keep these shareholders who do not know and do not care what our core product is, right? Like, I don't want to go on one of my yaps, but movie studios have almost always been headed by greedy fucks, right? Give that little girl methamphetamine and make her dance that scarecrow, right? Let's sign these people to fucking slave contracts and not pay any of them. It's always been a bad, dirty business. But the difference is their business was movies.
Yeah.
The core business of movie studios during the studio era, even into the 80s, and it kind of ends at the 80s, was our core business is movies. We want the exhibition business. We want the movie making business to be as healthy as possible because that's where we make money. We want, eventually, when they stop fighting it, we want the home video market as healthy as possible because that's where we make even more money. So we got to make the most crowd-pleasing, sensational, and or quality movies we can, right? We got to give the people what they want, and we also got to make good shit, and that's always the goal. When the people who are running the studios are answering to people who don't give a fuck about movies, they only give a fuck about ROI. None of that matters anymore. You don't have to give people what they want. You just got to give people what you think you can sell tickets for. It doesn't matter if you disappoint them once the tickets are sold. It doesn't matter if you cannibalize the home market because you've got a fucking streaming service. So who gives a shit? You can gouge them there again.
Yeah.
So we're moving towards that shift that Robert's talking about, where it's just about what can we get out of people. And you can get a hell of a lot more with a Cars 2 than you can by taking a risk on something like Wall-E.
I think too, also off the back of the success of Cars, not only did they develop Cars 2, but then they were doing all these Toy Story specials, and then 2015, the first time they released 2 films in 1 year, and then that's really spiraled out. Planes we had, and Planes Fire and Rescue, and
TV show spinoffs, and
everything. It sort of lost, the brand sort of lost its specialness.
Yes,
that Walt Disney Animation proper had in the late 80s, early 90s with the Renaissance, where every year it was a big Disney movie and everybody saw it because it was a big deal. And now it's just become so diluted over the last, since the Cars kind of kicked off.
But to your point, Robert, like, you're right on the money. It's also like the opposite mentality, right? Yeah. Where even though it was bullshit, when we were kids, they'd be like, well, Oliver and Company's out of the vault. You got to get the clamshell case right now because it's going to go back in the vault. Right. And you're not going to. Oh, Lady and the Tramp is showing in theaters for a limited engagement. Now, it had already been in theaters 25 times, but limited engagement because their core business was movies.
Mm-hmm.
And movies made money by selling you tickets and selling you tapes.
Yeah.
That's it. So that's all they cared about was, we got to sell you tickets. We got to sell you tapes. And now we got to get that stock price to go up. And the stock price goes up when we show our investors a slate of sure bets. If we can do D23 and go, we've got 25 things coming out and they're all derivative of something that's already made $1 billion.
Well, the current iteration of that is the live action remakes. Like, now they're not constantly releasing things. They're just like, remember that movie you loved when you were a kid? Here's a new version of it.
Bingo.
for your kids to enjoy. So you make the same money on minimal creative effort.
But you're also seeing it with the Marvels, with the MCU, and with Star Wars, with the way they're diluting everything.
Absolutely.
It's not. You guys are absolutely. It's not special anymore. They're not one up in quality. They're one up in quantity.
And as much as the Disney Vault was bullshit, right? Because it was just a marketing thing.
Yeah.
It did create this sense of, if you don't own it, you may never see it again.
Yep.
Because, and then eventually in the 90s, they started pumping out those straight to video Oliver and Company 5 and Aladdin, Return of Jafar, and all this dreck, right? But also, even as a kid, Robert, because you and I are like basically the same age, you and I fucking knew that ain't the real shit. That's not, we weren't clamoring to watch Lady and the Tramp 3. Right? But they've taken almost the opposite philosophy that Disney had for the longest time, which is, this isn't something special. This is just content.
Mm-hmm.
This is just another thing to produce. Take it or leave it. But we need your money. Whether you like it or not, we're going to get your money. And that is the aggressive attitude that they've had now, basically starting around this point, moving forward. Really in the 2010s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing: it's fucking worked for them.
Yeah.
It's fucking worked for them, because as much as people complain about those parks, they're always fucking full.
Mm-hmm.
Robert lives right down the road from them.
Yeah.
Right? They're always full. He doesn't have to pay taxes because those fuckers. Now they have a whole cottage industry of guys like us who make content who practically live in those fucking parks, eating Mickey beignets. Mickey beignets. Had Robert been right with God, he could have gone to the
I was raised Catholic, so it's like,
well, that's why
it's complicated.
Lundberg will tell you that's why you're not right with God.
Well, explains a lot.
Yeah. The Holy Land experience up in Orlando would still be operational today, Robert, had you gone there and spent your hard-earned money on Jesus ears instead of Mickey ears. What would Jesus ears be, Lundberg? Crown of thorns for the kids?
That's what it would have to be, right? Just nestle it right on your.
Yeah. What's the Disney Plus, like, what's the app for the Holy Land experience to get you on earlier? Is that like the
Darren, are you familiar with? Did you know that was a real thing? Does he even know about the Holy Land experience?
I don't know.
There was a real theme park. Look it up.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
What is it? Parting the Red Sea Pass?
I never went.
Yeah,
clearly.
that's it. Parting the Red Sea Pass. Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
That's perfect.
Oh my! It's Moses Plus, and he's got his staff, and his arms are up.
If Darren was managing it, they would still be around.
Oh my God, Lundberg! You should have been the GM of the Holy Land experience.
Instead, I'm sitting in my wife's closet recording a podcast. Yeah, I could have.
With laryngitis. Their Jesus was like an erotic novel cover model. No joke.
Oh, gosh.
It was like a Fabio type with long flowing hair.
Okay.
Sexy.
Yeah. All right. Well, WALL-E's real good. Disney is commercially and morally and creatively bankrupt. It's fleecing its fans. It's slowly turning its Disney adults into the people on the cruise ship in WALL-E. That, honestly, the closest thing to them fucking cruise ships is Disney World. It's the parks.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. The prophecy is true. Wow. We all think it's the best movie of the week. So let's move on to a movie that, without a shadow of a doubt, Robert is going to defend. And Lundberg is going to rip to shreds, and I'm going to be somewhere in between. It's Jon Favreau's Iron Man, which currently has a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes.
What are you building, Stark?
I'm working on something big. Yeah. I can fly.
I just finally know what I have to do.
Iron Man was directed by Jon Favreau with a screenplay by Mark Fergus, Hawk Ostby, Art Markham. Those are all fake fucking names. And Matt Holloway. It was released April 14th, 2008 in Sydney. Got to get those Australian credits. And May 2nd, 2008 in the United States. On a budget of $130 to $140 million, it made $585.8 million. Back when we thought oligarchs could become superheroes and that billionaires would build our way out of global crisis.
Marvel gambles on a B-list hero and a scandal-ridden star and winds up, creating the MCU.
Kevin Feige and Robert Downey Jr. take a second-tier Marvel Comics character and make him the dignitary for a franchise that will both save and ring the death knell for cinema as we know it.
Okay, all right. I'm going to do a zoom out here, and I'm going to break my one rule. And that is I'm going to take away one of my crutches that I just relied on for that last review portion. It is hard not to do a zoom out of the last 20 years and spend this entire portion of the conversation being meta about the implications of what this has wrought upon us all. But I think when it comes to the MCU, not we all, just the three of us here, but the planet and everybody we associate with and everything that's on Film Sky and Film Twitter and whatever film fascism is on X. I think we've all done way too much of that, both to our detriment and to the MCU's detriment. And it's partially their fault and it's partially our fault. Because we have gotten so in the weeds for such a long period of time about the slate and the phases and the behind the scenes and the reshoots and the recasting and this drama and that drama.
Post-credit scene.
Right.
Yeah.
And all this shit that we're no longer capable, I think any of us, of looking at either the old movies or the new things that are coming out as actual movies or television shows. And maybe you could make the argument that helped them for a while with all that world building and interconnectedness and all that intrigue about it when they were, but I think that this has turned us all into like box office analysts and like creative showrunners, fantasy showrunners for a cinematic universe. And we're all fantasy cosplaying as Kevin Feige and arguing about what they should do and this move and that move. And that I think our brains are cooked and we're no longer able to just watch the movies as self-contained or even interconnected stories. We just can't fucking do it anymore. We're analyzing the business side of it way more than we're engaging with the story side of it. And I think it's a two-way street. I think it's their fault and I think it's our fault. So for
Amen.
This portion of the podcast, my rule is let's not zoom out and talk about the MCU per se. Let's talk about this film as a standalone entertainment released by Paramount Pictures Corporation of America.
Not Disney.
Not Disney.
Paramount. Yep.
And let's talk about fucking Iron Man. Lundberg, listen to what Robert has to say.
This thing is 100%, I think, I don't want to say coasting, but it's boosted by the pure charisma of who I call the other Robert Jr.
That's right. He is the other.
He is so good. And I think it's hard to tell now if it's the performance, where Robert Downey Jr. ends and where Tony Stark begins, because they sort of retrofit this character to fit his sensibility to a certain degree. And the arc that he has in here is just so it's weird. It's weird watching this now because in a way it does feel quaint. You're like, oh, it's a story about this one guy and he has a kind of awakenness of consciousness, something that, I think we could probably think of a few people who like maybe someone we know in the real world should be through something like this and kind of come out better the other side. It's a classic example of where the script we know now, the script was being developed on the fly. It feels very improv heavy. There's real chemistry between Downey and Paltrow. And there's certain things about it that I still don't love. And now with the hindsight, you could see like sort of the writing on the wall, like the flaws and the strengths of the MCU are all already in here. Like this is the source code in a lot of ways, but what works so well that you can brush it aside on this first time coming across, a sky beam and all the other things that people have criticized the MCU for over the years and the repetitive storytelling. It's just such a star vehicle. And I think it broke the mold for superhero films too at the time. Like we had a star that was reinventing himself, found like the perfect role to sort of catapult himself to a essentially the one of the biggest stars in the world. And I think we underestimate the impact that something like the I Am Iron Man at the end of the film had, where up to this point, superhero movies were, we had the Spider-Man movies, we had the Batman movies and the Superman movies, but like Marvel was very much the sort of piecemeal. We get some Fantastic Four, we get some Blade, we get some, the first X-Men trilogy had been completed already by this point. But for a single solitary hero like this, the Iron Man coming in and tossing aside the whole secret identity thing and sort of breaking the rules felt fresh in a way that if you strip away all the baggage now, it still kind of catches that edge. And I think Favreau is a solid filmmaker. I don't think he has, perhaps the nuance of some of the other people that have tackled the genre, but I think he does a decent enough job bringing this character in this world to life. And I don't know, this movie still works. That's for me, like, it's never been one of my favorites, but like what it does extremely well. And in the grand scheme of the MCU, it's easy to forget just what one focused story felt like. Yeah. Even though obviously, like I said, a lot of the flaws here would kind of repeat themselves ad nauseum.
This is the only meta thing that I think we have to comment on, and you nailed it, which is, despite that it has all these screenwriters, Bridges, I think, was the first person to publicly talk about this, where he was like, the script wasn't working. We had like the outline of a story, but we didn't really have dialogue. Yeah. And John and Robert and I would sit down right before we shot the scene and would sketch out what the scene needed to be, and then we'd shoot it. Yeah. And I think that the fact that this is a kind of a tornado of circumstances. We've had the X-Men movies. Yes, we had the Spider-Man movies. That, when we talked about this, Robert, and I don't care what you say about it, that third one is no good.
I didn't say it was great.
And it was reviled when it came out, right? And so Spider-Man's kind of dead. The Fantastic Four movies, which I think have their place, but not well received, really. Blade has already petered out after two good movies and a disaster. But those are smaller movies. Those are New Line movies. It's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. And Nolan comes with Batman Begins and reinvigorates the entire genre, whether he intended to or not. Just reinvigorates the entire thing. But the bar for Iron Man and a non-Spider-Man Marvel movie was in the basement. It was so low. The fact that this was watchable is not fair, because the Fantastic Four movies and some of the X-Men movies are watchable. But the fact that this was not 20th Century Fox, it didn't look like Daredevil or Elektra or Fantastic Four or the X-Men movies, which all kind of looked the same, right? That the fact that this looked different, had a higher caliber of actor in it, with Gwyneth Paltrow in it, right? Jeff Bridges in it. Yeah, Robert Downey Jr. was on the come up of his career, but he already been critically acclaimed, and this was a resurgence. He was like a prince in the 90s, right? Mm-hmm. at least the early part of it. So Chaplin and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, okay, this felt like, and it's Paramount, and Paramount used to mean something. So this felt like this is their Batman Begins, right? And the fact that it was highly entertaining and a star vehicle, and this is kind of hard to forget, we're kind of seeing a different Robert Downey Jr. than we had been used to seeing in movies. This was not old shtick, Robert Downey Jr. This was kind of, he's healthy, he's sober, he's free, he's quick, he's not a fucking mess anymore. So there was like all these things that came together, and this movie massively overperformed. In retrospect, it seems like it underperformed because it's so low, but this massively overperformed because even comic book fans didn't give a flying fuck about Tony Stark or Iron Man. But it also, I think, gave the wrong lesson, which is we can make this stuff up on the fly. And as long as we've got charisma and we hit the right notes and we seed and have some Easter eggs, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, we can catch lightning in a bottle. We have manufactured a way to catch lightning in a bottle. And it immediately doesn't work again and again. The rest of phase one is like kind of all over the place, up and down in quality. Until they basically go, well, why doesn't every character sound like Iron Man? And then we eventually get Guardians, and they go, why doesn't every movie feel like Guardians of the Galaxy, right? And that's all I really want to say about the meta part of it. I will say that you feel the seams in this movie, and I always have. And I think all of the Iron Man movies have this problem, which is, and even like some of the Iron Man shit in like Infinity War and Endgame, which are two movies I like, and I like Infinity War a lot. I think it's one of the most rewatchable movies they've ever made. That's high praise coming from me. And you're like, I don't know why Tony is saying that. I don't actually know what those words mean. When you really listen to them, it doesn't make sense based on what other people are saying to him or what the plot of the movie is. And I'm not even talking about like his quippiness. I'm just talking about his reaction to stuff. It's odd constantly. And it gets weirder the more you're in it. And I don't think we gave a shit because the charisma was through the roof and we ended up really caring about this character. But you see that here where you're like, they're just kind of charisma sliding their way through some of these scenes, and they don't actually make any fucking sense. Conversely, here's the positive thing I'll say about this movie as a self-contained film. I think that their idea, and I've been on the record of this forever, of reinterpreting the 10 Rings as an Al-Qaeda kind of group in an era in which we were getting decapitation videos of U.S. citizens sent to us on the nightly news is bold, is genius. It creates an actual threat. And then being like, oh, and that evil, this guy was supplying weapons to them, whether he knew it or not, because that's how the industrial military complex works. That's bold. Making him, yeah, he's funny and he's in the car, but making him complicit with terrorism in 2008, 7 years after 9/11, is the kind of stuff they're not going to do anymore. And the fact is, it's not ha-ha. They commit to it and make it like this character's going to pay. The fact that he is so cavalier about it matters in this movie. And I'll also say that I think that this is the only actual Iron Man movie that has ever been made. I don't know what those other movies are. You may like them, you may not like them, but they're not interested in Tony Stark as a person. Maybe a little bit in the Avengers movies, those have a little bit more kind of Iron Man in them. But as far as like what is true, yeah, it's a modification of the character, like you said, Rob, to fit around his personality, because Tony Stark was not a quippy kind of guy. He was a drunk asshole, arrogant prick. That's in here, right? I'm still pissed we never got Demon in the Bottle. I am pissed twice over what they did with the Mandarin because I thought the setup was fucking incredible. Mm-hmm. But overall, this to me feels the closest that the MCU has ever gotten to like Batman Begins. something of that tier of, yeah, we're setting up a bunch of stuff for the future, but this movie works on its own. And yeah, we're kind of reinterpreting this character or contextualizing him a little bit different. It may get work for a modern era, but I'm in the same way that I'm pissed that Nolan completely deviates from what he began in Batman Begins to make The Dark Knight. I am even more pissed because we never got a Dark Knight Iron Man. We got Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3. And I'm pissed that this version of Iron Man did not continue. And that cave sequence, when he finally builds the fucking suit and he's got the reactor in his chest, is the closest they ever came. That was, I posted on Blue Sky. That's the peak of that character for me. There are bigger emotional payoffs, and I was fucked up when he said, "I am Iron Man," and I thought it was a great callback, and he blows himself up to save the world, and that was obviously a motif that they started here when he's like, "Push the button," right? She's like, "You'll die," and he's like, "Push the button," right? So it goes all the way back to the beginning of like he is learning throughout these episodes to become a self-sacrificing guy. But this is the only Iron Man movie they ever made. The rest of them, I don't know what they are. So, all right, Lundberg, why is this movie awful?
Well, it's going to blow your mind. It's weird to me that I'm going to be the most positive about this movie out of both of you. Robert and I were talking elsewhere. I watch this movie regularly just to remind myself that these MCU things used to feel and look like actual movies. I'm going back to when we went to go see this in the theater, I kind of knew who Iron Man was, right?
Yeah.
My wife did not know who it was. The group that we were with, we just decided after dinner, what's this movie Iron Man? Let's go watch it. And by the end of the movie, everybody in the group bought this character, bought Robert Downey Jr. They bought the world. At the end when Sam Jackson, and again, this is the movie, Rob, you talk about breaking the mold. I don't think people were really aware of post-credit scenes until Sam Jackson comes out and says, "I want to associate you with the Avengers initiative," right? Mm-hmm. When we walked out, everybody was like, "I don't know what Avengers is, but I'm interested in what Avengers is." And that is the movie's biggest accomplishment. This is what movies should do. Like a lot of these other franchises that try to do the interconnected universe stuff, they don't work. And I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why the MCU is just magic. And I just think it's because you built it on a foundation of an actual good movie with good character arcs, with good special effects, with good themes, with good
about
motifs.
The Hulk movie, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that one, which is a complete, you can just write that one up. And again, it was shocking in Incredible Hulk when Robert Downey Jr. walks in at the end to meet William Hurt and people were like, "What's happening?" That still blew people's minds, right? But again, hearkening back to this, if you're looking at the Marvel when they were trying to make themselves a movie, again, we know the story about they shopped out Spider-Man, they shopped out X-Men to, differing kind of results, right? They shopped out Blade, and then all those made impact. They were trying to do this again with Iron Man, but then they decided, no, let's make this our first Marvel Studios project. And again, when you sit down and watch this, it feels like an actual movie. Yeah, they improvised it. Yeah, Jeff Bridges says it's a $500 million student film. I think that's what he said with all the improvising.
Yeah.
And the thing that's interesting though is if you're looking at the history of superhero movies, and Jason, I know you agree with me on this one, is Superman kind of set the standard in 1978 for what comic book movies should be, right? Mm-hmm. It took them another 11 years before Batman came out. And then people were like, "Oh, Batman, people like this, but they like the gothicness. So let's make a bunch of pulp heroes into comic book stars," which didn't work, right? And then I think the next, again, X-Men comes out, and there's the line of, "Oh, what do you prefer, yellow spandex?" But it's like, after Batman and Robin, people did not, if you put these characters in yellow spandex, the movie would have failed. X-Men is compromised, but it's done in a realistic tone that people bought that these superhero things could work. And then you have Spider-Man that completely leaned into the comic book aesthetic, was completely colorful, and was completely true to the character, so much that when they try to make Amazing Spider-Man 10 years later, they have to thesaurus themselves into making a unique origin story because the first Raimi Spider-Man had done it so perfect, right?
Yep.
And then you have, again, you're talking Batman Begins. You guys have mentioned it a few times. It's interesting that Batman Begins was so influential in so many movies. You have this one, which they talk about in the production of it. You have Casino Royale, they talk about using that as an influence. You have Abrams' Star Trek, they're using Batman Begins as an influence. Again, it's funny because they didn't have a script, and this is the thing that's always been fascinating about this movie. And I'm reading you a bunch of stuff, and I apologize for that, but I used to have a blog back in the day, and I wrote a comparison of Batman Begins and Iron Man. So I'm just going to read the plots of both, right? The irresponsible son of a dead billionaire philanthropist is captured and imprisoned in a faraway eastern country where he learns the error of his ways. He escapes and returns to the U.S. determined to make a difference. Using his vast fortune to forge an armored suit, gadgets, and a new identity, he launches a crusade against the crime and corruption that threatens to envelop the world as he knows it. He later has a run-in with authority figures who condemn his acts of vigilante justice. So in Batman Begins, you have the Batmobile chase. And here you have Iron Man being chased by the planes, right?
Mm-hmm.
A villain is introduced early on as a potential arch nemesis until it's revealed this first villain is merely a pawn of the main villain, who's the hero's former friend and mentor. This mentor antagonist confronts the hero with his plans for world domination and leaves him for dead, but the hero is rescued by his loyal butler or servant. So again, Alfred rescues Bruce from the burning Wayne Manor. In this one, it's the little arm that comes and saves Tony, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he regroups and steels himself for a final confrontation. So what they did is they took something that worked. They looked at Batman Begins, which again, you talked about kind of broke another mold and kind of set the standard.
Mm-hmm.
They used, it's kind of if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. They took the plot of Batman Begins and they just they used the skeleton of that to inform Iron Man. But here's the difference is, you've got Robert Downey Jr. improvising stuff. It gave the movie its own identity, its own flavor. Everybody we were with in that group fell in love with Robert Downey Jr., even though they know who he was, right? His rapid fire, his razor sharp wit, again, is, like you said, Rob, defines this whole movie, and it's everybody trying to play catch up with him. Again, they took a Batman Begins-esque plot skeleton, but they made it their own by giving it its own personality. And you got the Whedonisms, and we've talked about that before, how everybody sounds like the first Avengers is great because as Whedon wrote them, you could just give me the words on the page and I'll know exactly who's talking. I'll know that that's Thor talking. I'll know that this is because they talk differently, but now they all talk the same. Again, I'm going back to this idea that these used to feel like movies with actual characters in them. And it's derivative of other things, but they gave it its own personality. So you bought the world by the end of this. I just think they've done more daring things in the future. And Iron Man 2 was compromised, all this stuff, but this is a good, solid movie. And I think that's what the difference is with all these other, like you have the Tom Cruise Mummy or whatever, where you're building it all on you're not making a good movie first.
Correct.
And I think that's the issue here. I just think that this movie is solid and it's a good starting point. And like I said, it looks like a movie. Favreau's very smart. He's a good filmmaker. This works as a movie, I think.
Can I use one of your points to critique one of my own points?
Sure.
I think you are on the money with, they take the template of what worked 3 years previous and go, okay, that's a great origin story. It modernizes the character. It's different than what we've seen before. We could use that. Obviously, like there's a certain archetype for a certain era of superhero. And, part of the reason why Spider-Man is so awesome is because he kind of breaks those archetypes. He's not a billionaire robber baron turned good who's going to use his wealth for the innocent. He's one of a kid. Yeah, he's one of us, right? He's one of us living in the tenements. He's not the guy living at Gracie Manor or whatever. So so Tony Stark in a reductionist way, comic book fans will tell me I'm wrong. And they're probably right, but he is a poor man's Bruce Wayne. So if you took this exact story, right, and you played it more earnest, kind of like what I'm demanding and critiquing it for, then it will feel like this is Batman Begins light, right? Mm-hmm. So by letting him riff, essentially, you're making, even though the plot isn't distinct, you're making Tony distinct.
Yeah.
And therefore you're making Iron Man distinct.
This is what Prince Caspian did not do. Like the bridgings from Lord of the Rings.
It's true. Now, here's what I think they accidentally did. they accidentally made Iron Man Spider-Man. Not Peter Parker, Spider-Man, right? But he's just Spider-Man all the time, constantly quipping, constantly talking shit. So then when you eventually got to Spider-Man, you couldn't do it because Iron Man already had his personality.
Well, they already just made him Iron Man Jr.
So they made him Iron Man Jr.
Yeah.
Right. Because they painted themselves into a corner going, we can't have two fucking Iron Mans, right? So anyway, so I think you're right, and I think this movie is not without its merits, which is why it's my second best of the week, despite the fact that I'm sick and tired of this shit. Because it is a film, it's a movie, and I give it a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, it's also my second of the week. It's an 8.1 for me.
Wow.
But I mean, it's also when we say that it's basically they gave that outline. They stuck to that outline, gave it to Downey, and they let him color in those lines. It's sort of doing a disservice to the work that he does. The distinction of the scene where Pepper has to pull the wire out of his chest, and how well all the interplay with Pepper works. The emotionality in the scene where Yinsen dies and tells him, don't waste your life, which carries through like, as you were saying, Jason, the rest of his arc throughout the course of this franchise.
Yep.
When he has the press conference and he sits down and he's eating the cheeseburger and he's like being real, like he's able to sort of swing effortlessly from that kind of quippy rich asshole vibe to like really being to that earnestness when he needs to. When Pepper comes in and she's like, I thought we're going to move past this. He's like, there's nothing but this. There's nothing but the next mission and then the next and the next. And he established just how his arc has changed, how he's changed over the course of the story. I think it's a remarkable performance. And that's, as we've all been saying, that's the foundation that they just built on for everything else.
Why didn't they do it again, though? Why did they take this whole thing in the direction that they did?
Well, I mean, in Iron Man 2, they kind of did the same thing again.
Yeah,
that's the problem they did. My biggest issue with that movie is that they're like, all right, well, let's make him a rich asshole again, showing off in front of Congress, and then have him learn like humility and accountability by the end of it again. So it just feels like the same movie on repeat. Only now there's a literally another Iron Man with War Machine next to him.
I would take 2 over 3 any day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Iron Man 3 is the shits. I hate
Well,
that movie.
that's where Iron Man 3 is actually my favorite of the Iron Mans. Just because it's Shane Black. I love Shane Black, and it's got his
I do like 3
well.
as well.
Don't make your own fucking movie,
3.
Shane Black. Go try and make another Predator movie where you turn autism into a superpower. You fuck.
Yeah,
I'm talking. Go hire another sex predator to be in one of your movies. You fuck.
Well, I think it's hilarious, the Mandarin twist. I love that. I think it's so
hate
fun.
it. I hate it.
I'm also a big Kiss Kiss Bang Bang guy, so I was like, oh, that, but Iron Man? Sure, that's fine.
I just watched Kiss Kiss Bang Bang or make Kiss Kiss Bang Bang 2. Don't shove that shit on my Iron
They
Man.
did. It's called The Nice Guys.
Yeah, and that's fine too. I want a suitcase and a big set piece where he takes the fucking famous Iron Man suitcase and the armor comes out and it forms over him.
Yeah.
I want some of the practical suits, like in this movie, where it isn't just all digital. Even part 2, where he's still in some fucking suit, at least from the waist up in scenes. Why did you do this to me? Okay, it's time to move on to a movie.
You don't want to hear my score. I guess we're going to.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, it's also my second. I've got it at 8.0. And again, just something that you're saying. It reminded me though. Robin Williams improvising the hell out of Aladdin. There's a part where you have to have the plot come in, and so there's a part where Robin Williams has to be sincere about, well, you said you'd free me. The same thing happens in this. Everything is so improvisatory that when Downey Jr., Rob, like you said, goes, this is the next mission, all of a sudden you can feel them like, oh, we've got to do the plot now. It can't all be the improvisational stuff. I thought that was kind of weird because that's the negative of the improvising stuff, is that you have to at some point.
And in lesser hands, it would have fallen flat right there. And you would be like, oh, see, you lost me, movie.
Right. It's noticeable, but it doesn't kill the movie. But again,
absolutely
an actual movie. So 8.0.
Well, in a movie where there's a very memorable line where Obadiah Stane is like, oh, but Tony Stark built this in a cave with a box of scraps. It feels like, the movie sort of positioning Kevin Feige as Tony Stark, building this movie literally out of scraps.
And I have never looked at the behind the scenes to this movie because the suit is so tangible in this.
Yes.
It's so it feels so real that I'm like, I just think it's real. I don't think they use CGI.
It's never looked better. It's
Yeah.
never looked
It
better.
hasn't.
Agreed.
I don't want the illusion broken for me, so I have never watched the behind the scenes stuff.
Everything's nanobots now.
This is why this is the only Iron Man movie. The rest of them are Robert Downey Jr. collecting $400 million to fuck off and waste my time. Okay. Although I do like Mickey Rourke in the second one, but get my board.
Where's my board?
Where's my board? Okay, it's time to move on to a movie that everybody hates and I think is pretty great. It is time for Quantum of Solace.
How much do you know about Bond? His MI6 says he's difficult to control. Nice way of saying that everything he touches seems to wither and die.
If you could avoid killing every possible lead, it would be deeply appreciated.
I'll do my best.
I've heard that before.
Quantum of Solace, rated PG-13.
Quantum of Solace was directed by Mark Forrester, is written by Paul Haggis, Neil Purvis, Robert Wade, is released, October 31st, 2008, or 31 October 2008, and 14 November 2008 in the United Kingdom and United States, respectively. I still said it wrong. Budget, $200 to $230 million. Box office, $589.6 million. Bond is back, and this time revenge is a dish best served, shaken, not stirred.
James Bond embarks on a quest for revenge in a sequel that keeps the franchise alive between Casino Royale and Skyfall.
James Bond seeks revenge on the evil consortium that murdered the love of his life in the bigger, better movie that came before this.
The whole world right now is living through a shitty James Bond movie. And that's all I'm going to say. I already touched on that. Rewind if you understand what I'm saying. Okay. My experience with these movies is completely different than anybody else's. I don't like James Bond. I don't like the character. I don't like his movies. I've never liked any of them. It was not big in my household, but they were always on TV. I don't like any of them. I don't care what anybody says. It has a fandom. I understand. It's very loyal. It's been around for 50 million years. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not for me. I saw Skyfall. I saw Tomorrow Never Dies in theater, right? And I had horrible diarrhea. That's my biggest memory of that one. And then I saw Sphere afterwards. Double feature. A double feature with diarrhea when you shit your pants is tough stuff when you're barely in 8th grade.
I just re-listened to that episode today, by the way, in 2006. Yeah. That diarrhea story is fresh in my mind.
Yeah, right.
Do you? I've always wanted to ask you though. Do you still have that sleeping bag? Did you wash it?
I do. I got it. I do. It's downstairs in my closet. I got it. No, it's in my mom's basement actually. But I do have it. I've only owned 2. Real Ghostbusters and that one, the Coleman. So, okay. Nobody need to know that. Yeah. Oh, it's been washed, man. It's been 25 fucking years. So anyway,
I hope so.
I saw Skyfall because the trailer looked so amazing that even I, as a non-Bond fan, had to go see it. And my dearly departed co-host, Pat, may he rest in peace, big James Bond guy. So we went together and loved that movie. Loved it. Thought it was great. Had never seen Casino Royale. I knew that a lot of people really liked it and thought it was the Batman Begins, like you said, of James Bond movies. I remember that being the comparison, right? Grittier, more realistic reimagining. That was all the buzzwords we were using at that time. Never saw it. I only saw it for the first time maybe 2 years ago. And I watched Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, and I saw Spectre because I love Skyfall so much. I did see Spectre. I didn't go to theaters to see it, but I watched it at home and thought it was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did see, I think I watched, I saw what is it? No Time to Die?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I should probably go back and watch the beginning now. So 2 years ago, I watched the Casino Royale and this one back to back. I'm here to tell you, as somebody who's approaching Casino Royale for the first time all these years later, it is not as remarkable and revelatory as it was to you guys who saw it in the past. It's a very good, very strong movie, but it's not like, I didn't know you could do this with James Bond, right? You know what I mean? I'd already seen Skyfall. I'd already seen 3 other iterations of, I got it, right? And also everybody tried to do Batman Begins, Bourne Identity, reinventions of their characters. So it just didn't feel as fresh to me, but it was still a remarkable film. Then I watched this one immediately after, and it wasn't this dramatic step down in quality that everybody told me. We went from Mount Olympus to the pits of Sheol, and I just didn't experience that. I said, this is not as good as the other one, but I think it's a decent continuation of that story from the movie I just watched and liked, and I can immediately hit play on the next chapter of the story. And I know that the next one, which I've already seen and think is amazing, is great. So what this actually feels like to me is those middle episodes of a Netflix series back in like 2015, like Daredevil, for instance, where you're like, the first 3 episodes are going to blow your fucking mind. And the last 2 or 3 episodes are going to blow your fucking mind. Then there's 8 episodes in between. And because they're going to do 18 of these fucking episodes. So, and that's going to be, it's going to have its moments, but it's not going to be as good as the beginning and the end, right? There's going to be a lag. This to me is what that is. And I think this movie looks incredible. I think it's got some great action sequences. I think the villain, terrifyingly, is one of the most, of all their evil billionaires, is one of the most realistic fucking villains, this Dominic Green, I've ever seen. He's basically Elon Musk before Elon. We thought Elon was going to be Tony Stark. We got Dominic Green instead. I thought it continues the plot. No, the love affair between him and Camille, if that's what you even want to call it, doesn't rank anywhere between him and Vesper. But it's not supposed to,
right?
Because he's already a shell of himself. She is what we've seen other Bond girls be in those earlier movies, which is just someone for him to stick his dick in.
Well, she's a mirror to his quest in this one. That's all that she is. Like, she's on a mission of revenge.
Yeah.
Correct. But okay, before the reinvention, right? Before Casino Royale, we're not used to a Bond. And yeah, I know there's the one where one of them did fall in love and they killed her in the next movie or whatever. But we're not really, we're used to Bond just kind of clown his way through women. Some of them try to kill him. Some of them fall in love with him. He doesn't really, he kind of cares about some of them, but then they die. But he never really loves deeply, right? So the idea that he meets his match, someone who can get him to the point of going, I don't even ever want to become 007 James Bond that I'm just happy to be in love, right? It's an origin story that kind of diverts him for like the last hour out of his origin story and goes, and you're like, well, I thought he was going to become James Bond. What the fuck is all this Italy shit, And then we're like, well, maybe he's not going to become the guy. And then you realize, oh no, what's made him that stone cold killer who doesn't become attached to anybody or anything is this heartbreak. I don't expect the next woman that he meets and sucks his dick to have the same emotional impact on him. That's the point of that, right? Like that's her last line to him is basically like, look, if I could get you back, right? If I could set you free, I would. But I can't, right? Because I'm you and you're me.
There's too
and
much.
The prison's in here. It's in your mind, You're still fucked up. And that's the point of the end of that movie, right? The end, the little coda to this film is really kind of the sort of actual sequel, or it's in a sense, the end of the story from Casino Royale, where he finally is able to prove to himself that woman actually loved him, right? That Vesper actually did care about him and sacrificed herself to save his life. And the fact that he now knows that doesn't set him free. It makes him even worse off, right? Because now you didn't just lose a double agent who you thought loved you but didn't, and then she got killed, but she really wasn't who she thought she was. No, she was who you thought she was,
Yeah.
And you still lost her. That's fucked up shit to end a James Bond movie on. And he just drops the necklace in the fucking snow and walks off into the darkness. And you're like, oh shit, man. And I think that's great. So this movie really works for me. It's nowhere near as good as Skyfall. It's obvious, and it's nowhere near as good as Casino Royale. But it's not as bad as everybody says to a guy who came at it 20 years later.
It's not Spectre, that's for sure.
And no,
yes,
no. That's the other thing. I saw Spectre before I saw this, so I'm like, well, y'all are tripping, like, because Spectre is terrible,
awful movie.
Yeah, really bad.
And I know that he hates this movie. I know that he thinks this is the worst one. He's on record as saying that, Daniel Craig, and he's like, he thinks this is his worst performance, and this is the worst one he made, and he's embarrassed by it. I'm like, buddy, have you seen Spectre? I honestly think No Time to Die is kind of weaker than this one.
Whoa.
To be honest with you.
About
that. Okay. Who wants to go first?
Let's keep tradition. Rob, go for it.
Okay. All right. So my history with Bond. So I still haven't seen most of them. I saw GoldenEye when that came out, Tomorrow Never Dies on VHS. And then I think I went back at some point, probably after Casino Royale, and saw like a couple of the Connery ones back in the day. But other than that, like this is the only Bond whose entire run I've seen. And so what you're saying, like the serialized, I have a whole podcast focused on franchises. So the fact that this was serialized Bond for the first time, I thought was really cool. The fact that you open on the car chase and then there's the reveal that he's got Mr. White in the trunk of his car from the end of Casino Royale. That really works. That's cool connectivity. And at the end, the way it circles back around and ties up Casino Royale really works. But to me, in the middle, it's like starts off continuing Casino Royale, does a sidestep, has this whole other story that is far less interesting. And then at the very end kind of comes back around like, oh yeah, let's close the loop on all the Vesper stuff. It wants credit for having that story continue, but it also kind of doesn't exactly commit to that in my mind. I feel like the filmmaking here is serviceable at best. I actually, Mark Forster, the director, did Stranger Than Fiction, which is a movie I really like. I don't think he's suited for this. Yeah, see, we'll have to talk about that one day, Darren. So I don't think he's suited for Bond. I think the editing in this movie was very distracting. It was very choppy, and people were having a conversation about something, and then it's jumping to like after the decision has been made, and it's like every moment was very disorienting. I think that Camille is a decent character. I don't think she gets a lot to do in the middle half of this movie. The middle part of this movie, she's completely gone. And it's clear they were trying to go for sort of Michelle Yeoh and Tomorrow Never Dies, like an equal badass sort of on a parallel track, like you guys were saying with Bond. I think the villain is maybe realistic, but he's not that. He's pretty flat, I think, to watch. And I don't think that helps.
He's a wuss.
Coming after Le Chiffre and before Silva, I think doesn't help. So it's, I don't know. It's a decent movie. Like this for me is very middle of the road for the Craig Bonds. This is probably probably right above Spectre, below No Time to Die, I think. And it does what it needs to, but like just barely. And I feel like it's just boxes being checked off. And this has never been a franchise for me. So it's not something that I went in with specific, but particularly high expectations of, but it's also one of those movies that immediately after I watch it, I start to forget like it doesn't stick. There's nothing sticky about it. It's just barely passable Bond adventure for me.
Well, as somebody who grew up on James Bond, I've said this on my podcast before, my mom, single mom, only child, she tried to introduce me or keep me in love with the things that all boys should love. So I grew up on Godzilla, on Transformers, and on James Bond. And I've seen all these movies. I know the ups and downs and the trajectories that they follow. The thing with the James Bond movies, yeah, he's an infamous sex pest, right? I think that's you're not supposed to identify with this guy because he's living a life that's taking him nowhere. It's just making him more hollow, right? But people like to emulate this guy and aspire to be this guy. I'm like, that's the wrong attitude to have for James Bond. Anyway, so the Broccoli's are weird because they just have these movies follow a very strict formula, very strict guideline, to the point where when they broke the mold with On Her Majesty's Secret Service, it didn't do as well as Thunderball. And so they thought of that as, oh, this is a mistake. Let's go back to Connery. Let's make Diamonds Are Forever, which is not a good Bond movie in the slightest and a huge step down from the quality that On Her Majesty's Secret Service is. Then you go to Roger Moore, who I don't think, and I know a lot of people love him, but I don't think he has a movie that rises above the formula like Connery had with Dr. No from Russia with Love before it became a franchise, like Lazenby did or anything. I don't think Roger Moore has a high point. He has some okay movies and some really bad movies. And then you have Timothy Dalton comes in, and Roger Moore was so goofy that Timothy Dalton being a serious Bond that turned so many people off that it didn't work for a lot of people. But again, they're just used to the franchising of it, right? Living Daylights is a movie that's very important to me because I went to go see it thinking that critics were wrong. My mom was like, she took me to all these movies. So she's like, let's go see Living Daylights. And I was like, no, Roger Ebert only gave it 2 stars, right? And this is me being, 10 years old. And when I watched Living Daylights, I'm like, that was actually really good. And so that helped me realize I can make up my own mind about movies. I don't have to listen to what a critic says. Critics can be wrong, right? And then you have, I guess, Dalton, there's a whole bunch of backstory. You have Pierce Brosnan, who is a great Bond in some terrible movies.
Yeah.
It just didn't work. And then the reason that I think the Bond, and people don't, I know people don't like Craig because, first of all, the Bond Not Blonde thing. Second of all, they did try to serialize it. They did try to make him something, and people do push back against that. But we just talked about a franchise movie and a franchise where, to me, the more formulaic, the more a paint by numbers a franchise is, it bores me. I need personality. And so to have the Craig Bonds actually try something different and be the Ian Fleming Bond is very important to me. I was like, this is great. And yet Casino Royale is a very good, like Batman Begins-esque, like James Bond movie. But it's a weird movie because it seems to end like you guys talked about, but then it picks up like for another 20 minutes. And it doesn't really end still because he goes after Mr. White. Quantum of Solace isn't as deep. It's not as far reaching, right? But I like it as an act 3 to Casino Royale's act 1 and 2. I don't know if that makes sense. So it's a weirdly structured movie in that it's kind of the end to the story that started in Casino Royale.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do like that part. It's so funny in this movie how there's a running gag with Bond killing everybody. You know, he always, they try to contact him. He's like, well, it came to a dead end. And Emma's like, he killed him. So he's killing everybody that he comes. But then at the end, this counts as a character arc. He doesn't kill the main guy that he's been after this whole time.
That's what I've been saying. This movie cooks, boys.
So that's great, right? But like Rob said, I do like the chemistry between Craig and Giancarlo Giovanni. How do you say his name? I'm blanking on his name. The Mathis character, right?
Yeah.
I love Giancarlo Giannini. I love his chemistry with Jeffrey Wright. I think that quick scene in the bar is really funny. I think they've got a good rapport. But in between, you've got all these action scenes and it's all over the place and it doesn't build to, like there's a part where Bond literally walks into a room and some guy attacks him and you're like, oh, we're in the middle of an action scene. It keeps doing that. And like all the Bond movies are trying to emulate stuff that came before. Like I can go through the whole history, but I won't bore you with that. But you go back to Moonraker, that came out because of Star Wars, right? They tried to emulate that. Casino Royale tried to emulate Batman Begins. Quantum of Solace tried to emulate the Bourne movies, and Skyfall tried to emulate the Dark Knight. Spectre tried to emulate the MCU for some reason. Like all of a sudden we're tying it in. It's like, what the hell are you doing? Right. And Skyfall to me is my favorite Bond movie because it doesn't operate like a James Bond movie. It operates like we talked about, like an actual movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's got all the pieces, but it's an actual, again, look at the first shot of Skyfall. It's literally Bond blurry. But then he walks towards the camera and he comes into focus. That's the whole idea of Skyfall, is to bring Bond in focus. It actually works that way. But Casino Royale, trying to emulate the Bourne movies, it does the same thing as all the other Bourne knockoffs do, where they just think the quick, choppy editing is going to make you excited. But I know we try to push back against Greengrass, but he's got a very good aesthetic. Yeah, he's trying to put you in the moment. But he has the actor or the characters driving different color cars, right? He's going to cut to a shot of Bourne turning his steering wheel so you can reacquaint yourself and kind of find your bearings again. The problem with this movie is it tries to emulate those Bourne action scenes, but it's so choppy to the point where I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
The part where they have Mr. White, right? And he says, we have people everywhere. And all of a sudden the guy turns on him and shoots. M somehow looks like she's shot, but then Bond looks and there's a quick shot of her running away. I have no idea what the hell just happened. And it happens in every single action scene where it's just nonsense, where he's chasing that guy around. I could leave the room for 30 seconds, come back. It's the same spot. It's the same thing. Like, I'm not missing anything. There's no build. Just like I said, I like that this is a third act to Casino Royale, but I just don't think it works as a full solid movie, if that makes sense. I'm really losing my voice, so let you guys talk.
Can I suggest to you, Darren, that you sit down? This will only be about the runtime of Prince Caspian, and you watch all 3 in a row, or even over 3 nights. Watch Casino Royale, because that actually is like 4.5 hours long itself.
It's long.
So you watch Casino Royale, watch that. The next night you watch It's a Step Down, and then the next night you watch Skyfall. Or if you really want to do it, I think the right way, get out your phone, load them all up on there, watch about 30 to 50 minutes at a time over the course of a week. Turn it into a television show, and all of a sudden you're going to go, oh, I'm a Solace. Not so bad.
Well, get ready, because Amazon, I'm sure, will do that very shortly.
Yeah. Talking about diluting your brand, right?
Yeah, right.
I think we've already had that conversation, almost
Yeah,
in a sort of as if the host of the show is thinking on levels too few do. Yeah, that's right. We are going to enter that era of rapid dilution of a brand that, as weird as the Broccoli's were, and as, to your point, Lundberg, that they have chased other things, right? They were also oddly sort of protective.
Yeah.
Especially as that younger generation. I say younger, she's like 75. But as that next generation came in, and you kind of got to praise her for, I think when her older brother, and then he eventually phased out. I'm trying, again, the Bond fans will correct me, but to do what they did with Daniel Craig and changing basically the entire tone and tenor of what a James Bond movie was, is really bold. And yeah, it came after they already made 75 movies, but it was still a risky choice in 2004 or whenever that first Casino Royale came out. So I think I'm hard pressed to say we need to go back to small business, like the multi-millionaire, maybe borderline billionaire Broccoli family overseeing their own property. Because that isn't really small business. But in an era of trillion-dollar people whose personal asset and wealth is near approaching $1 trillion, when 10 years ago it was 56 billion, we're now to the point where billions are what millions used to be. And so I would much rather live in a world in which an IP is being milked by a family who maybe has some personal stake in it, right? Than people who can afford to lose $4 trillion worth of imaginary money out of the U.S. economy in 50 days and not be personally affected by it at all. How do you personally lose $200 billion or something like that of assets and not feel it? That's insane. So it's odd to me that I am now nostalgic for, let's get back to Disney trying to make Prince Caspian movies.
Oh, no.
Because the grass is real in the movies. I really want the Broccoli family to go and make a James Bond movie about oligarchs and trying to get oil out of I don't even know what the fuck his plan is. But at least I know that this is somebody's vision, that somebody is trying to care about this shit. So, I don't know what I'm trying to say there other than this movie, you guys are way too hard on it. And it's a 7 out of 10. It's my number 3 for the week.
Whoa.
It's middling, but it's not bad.
It's my number 3 for the week as well. I have it at a 6.4. I think it's important to also note, which none of us have brought up, that this was also in development during the writer's strike. Yeah, and so
if you didn't say it, I would have. Yeah,
you almost have to grade it on a slight curve based on that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think to the point of what Jason was just saying with Dominic Green, I think part of the problem with the villain is that he doesn't matter. Like, he literally doesn't matter. Yeah. Camille and James are not even. They're like, yeah, we're just working through this guy to get to what I really want.
Sure. Chop your foot off with an axe. Doesn't matter.
He's a middleman. And so I think that's part of why he's less compelling. But I do like, just to go out on a sort of a positive note, the theme song is not the positive note that I was going to go on. God.
How do you get Alicia Keys?
Bang, bang, bang.
And make her sound bad.
Make her sound terrible.
Yeah. And it's not Quantum, which is pseudo Spectre because of rights issues, etc. These movies, and this one included, all are really smart about not only sort of rebooting and reimagining Bond, but also kind of deconstructing the franchise in some ways. The fact that M is literally calling out, look how well your charm works, James. They'll do anything for you. And how many is that now? Just like the curse that James Bond bears, the cross that he bears, the curse that he carries. And throughout these films, I think is really fascinating. Overall, for me, the movie doesn't work, but also it's again, Spectre's it's like precipitous downfall from there. So,
well, I've also we're close. I've got it as 6.5. It's also my third of the week.
Nice.
And again, it's just to shout out to the podcast Popcorn Digest. I think there's a good movie in here, like Gareth and Andy said. Re-edit this movie. You could maybe have some good action scenes. Like, I would like to see a re-edit of this where it actually does work. But yeah, I mean, we do have to. It's just funny. This isn't the worst. Again, I don't agree with somebody that calls this the worst. Like, it's funny that Craig has my favorite Bond movie, but also my least favorite Bond movie, which is Spectre. I think it's just an awful piece of shit. But it's an interesting legacy. But again, they're very smart about trying to recontextualize the whole idea of Bond. And that's why I will take these Craig movies over almost any other of the actors.
I would be interested if there's a fan edit out there that cuts Casino Royale down a bit and then
adds this to the end.
Then adds this in and make like a 3.5-4 hour epic of those two. I think, to Jason's point, I think it would play a lot better. Yeah, well, we're gonna get that regardless. We're gonna get a Q spinoff. We're gonna get origin story.
Money Penny spinoff.
Yeah. It's gonna happen.
It turns out she was 007 before James Bond was. Actually, no. That's what it would have been back when they were trying to appeal to us libtards. But now that we don't have to kowtow to people who think that women are human, we don't gotta get that Money Penny. Maybe she's a stripper in this version, played by Melania.
Oh boy,
yeah. and if Jeff Bezos doesn't put $1 billion into Melania's Oscar campaign, then does he even want to live anymore? The president's asking.
Can we move on? Let's move on.
Don't put any ideas out there into the ether, please.
You want to move on, but you're going to come to regret it, because we're talking about Madagascar 2, Escape to Africa. Just a 64% Rotten Tomatoes, just slightly less than Quantum of Solace.
On November 7th,
This might get hairy.
get ready
What the heck?
to get your freak on.
No, he's in.
DreamWorks Madagascar 2.
Oh, can I kiss the bride, Skipper?
No.
Rated PG. In theaters and IMAX.
Madagascar 2 is directed by Eric Darnell, and Tom McGrath is written by Ethan Cohen. Not that Cohen, Bill Murray. And Eric Darnell and Tom McGrath. It was released November 7th, 2008 on a budget of $150 million.
Wow.
Folks, there are children starving in America. It made $603.9 million. A urban zoo crew finds themselves back in their homeland, only to find they aren't fit for survival in Mother Nature's cruel jaws.
The Central Park animals move it to continental Africa in a barely passable animated sequel.
Half-rendered CG animal friends escape from one African plane to another for a marginally better adventure that at least doesn't make me feel like shooting myself this time.
Okay, here's one thing I want to say. This is the last political comment I'm going to make.
This show is too political. It's. You sure you want to do this?
Did you not get Jeff's letters?
We are currently living under King Julian the 13th. Our president is this fucking lemur. He's going on about, well, democracy, and Cedric the Entertainer's saying, well, democracy's a fad. We'll get rid of it. And there's no joke. He talks about, I need to consolidate power all to myself so that we can dissolve checks and balances. I'm like, what the fuck? And we're all laughing at it. It's a kid's movie. That never happened here. Just like they said, Sinclair Lewis, it can't happen here. Well, fucker, it's happening, and you better wake up, because there ain't no singing and dancing lion unless his name is Jesus or Aslan who's going to come and save us. Okay. I was put off by the race humor of where he can't tell two black people apart. I thought, well, surely that's not what they're going for.
Oh, boy.
And then the bit goes for 5 fucking minutes, and you got Chris Rock going, almost like Tropic Thunder. What do you mean, you people? I'm going, oh shit, they do mean race. This is a white guy who has 2 black parents who can't tell Chris Rock from Chris Rock. What are we doing? Then an extended scene where the only thing that one man likes is how thick Jada Pinkett Smith is, and how fat her titties are, and how big her ass is. And as a man who wants to die by thigh, okay, I understand.
I'm writing that down. Die by thigh.
Die by thigh. I understand. Whether they're muscular, whether they're not as muscular, I don't care. I understand it. I understand, muscle mommies of America, of the world. I get it. But I thought, this doesn't make sense in a children's movie. We've got 2 horny hippos in a hot tub, and the guy is trying to dog down fucking Jada Pinkett Smith. It's just weird.
Isn't it weird that we have Chris Rock and Jada Pinkett Smith in the same movie?
In 3 of the same movies, yeah.
That's weird. That's a weird
shit.
tie.
They were co-stars. Oh my god! And they're women for kids. Willow Smith is in.
If they ever make another one of these, I guarantee you we'll get some kind of G.I. Joe slap joke.
Sure will.
Probably, yeah. Which one of you was on when I talked about the first Madagascar? Was it you, Lundberg?
No. I was never on for these.
I don't think it was me. This is the second franchise on this episode that I saw the first film 20 years ago. Was like, nope, I'm good, and never revisited again. So this was the first time watching.
All of a sudden, you went ding on Blue Sky. You got a DM. You went, this fucking guy. When is he going to take the hint that I don't like him? I don't know who the hell I talked about the first Madagascar with. That movie is unwatchable.
It's awful. Yeah.
It's really bad.
It is horrendous.
And it's not even the worst DreamWorks animation movie.
No.
It's yeah.
And I may be crazy. I am, if you've listened to this episode. Or read my screenplays. I think this is a better movie than the first Madagascar.
Yep.
This is more coherent. It's less banging 2 pots and pans together for 5-year-olds, right? It's less fart jokes, less spit take jokes, and right, although they kind of do it with a whistle thing. And I didn't hate this. It's not good.
Yeah.
But I feel less bad about putting a 5-year-old in front of this. Race jokes aside. BBW, big beautiful women fetish aside, then I do the first one. The first one I think is brain rot in animated form. This is just kind of an ugly, half-assed celebrity cameo zoo that has a couple of There's a couple of bits I don't remember that I went, huh. That's pretty clever. And that was it. So I give it a 6.5 out of 10. It's my number 4 for the week.
Wow.
I think that I remember being sort of tickled by the negotiations that were happening with the penguins and the
yes, that's one of them.
Like the
that's
union.
one of them.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know when they did the Penguins of Madagascar show and then movie, but like I could see why they were like, these are the minions.
Yeah, I was after
before
this.
before minions were minions.
Yes. You know the other one that got me?
Yeah.
It's the Tom Sawyer who whatever is fishing off the moon. And the penguins kick him off, and then they're like
sushi for breakfast.
Sushi for breakfast. I was like, that's actually funny.
The penguins are hands down the funniest thing.
Yeah,
in this
and then when they're negotiating with the monkey, they're talking about busting unions, just like Jeff Bezos does. And the monkeys are basically Starbucks or Amazon employees who are struggling to survive in our tertiary economy. Nickel and dime, folks, read it. And I really
maternity
and then just like for women for maternity leave. Yes. And then the monkeys are like, just like the unions. See, the reason why unions don't have any power anymore is because they got rid of the Italian mob, which backed up the unions. They broke it up. You can think Rudy Giuliani, who was in bed with the Russian mob and used the Russian mob to break up the Italian mob.
We're name dropping all sorts of great people.
Yeah. And that would explain your certain connections in the New York, New Jersey, Atlantic City area to Russia. Anyway, so I thought that is actually, they have compromising, or Kromprot, as the Russians say. They Krasnov, the penguins, into letting them have a union. And I thought, we need the mob back, and we need them to be willing to beat the shit out of these oligarchs, so that we can get our plane, so that we can go break up the dam, because just like Dominic Green, he's hoarding the water for himself at the expense of people, and we got to break it up so that that prosperity and resources can flow back to the indigenous peoples.
We should get the Broccoli family on it. I hear they have time.
Sure.
I think that, the truth is that Lady Broccoli is probably that old lady with the glasses who keeps trying to kill those.
Nana.
Yeah, Nana. She was funny too. And then when she showed up, the little part of my brain did like go off, and I did remember briefly her from the first movie. Yeah. Like one of the few things that
they gave you a flashback at the end. They Friday the 13th, and it's like, here's the end of the last movie, kids.
Yeah,
and then
great.
Yeah. I honestly, I'll give this movie a little bit more props. The true cold open, where they kind of retcon his Ben Stiller's origin.
Alex,
I thought that kind of worked. I thought that was really kind of, it's manipulative, but there's nothing of substance like that in that first Madagascar movie.
No.
And I thought, oh, okay. And I thought Bernie Mac, during those early parts, when they gave him something to do, was fantastic as the dad. I thought, this shit is, I honestly was like, oh, maybe this is going to be an actual movie as opposed to the last one.
My second laugh in the movie after the penguin sushi for breakfast is when the Alec Baldwin character threatens him, and he makes fun of Alex or whatever. And it's just the shot of the Bernie Mac character just staring at him, goes, before I kick your butt. Like that made me laugh.
Yeah. And now you just got to end up feeling sad about Bernie and how long he's been gone.
Yeah, I miss him.
So this is not, the first one's damn near unwatchable, honestly. This one's not good, but it's not as annoying.
Yeah.
It gets closer to being sincere and maybe a movie. It's not a movie, but it's closer to one.
It also feels to me like how reactionary this franchise was to Shrek. Like Shrek happened and DreamWorks, they got, this is our brand. Super high energy, spastic comedy, big names all thrown together, lots of pop culture reference. Exactly. And that completely changed their entire direction to now we have like Trolls and all the other stuff that they've been doing. But this feels like subpar Shrek. Like I would put Shrek 2 way above this, for example.
The exception of that being the Wild Robot.
Yeah.
It is a little spastic at times, but that one's like,
no, that's a great movie. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a B tier Pixar movie.
It's funny because Darren and I were talking about that recently. To me, it has very much WALL-E vibes going to kind of tie into our conversation.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing to aspire to. So my thing with the early DreamWorks animation stuff is, I don't like that they're so pop culture related because that dates it automatically. Yeah, they're so beholden to, these are our stars. This is Mike Myers. This is Robert De Niro. This is Will Smith. That it's like, you're not telling a story. You're just having me coast on the stars.
Right.
These early CG movies always look like they're half rendered to me. They look really ugly. The first Madagascar counts in that. And it's funny because, this is marginally better than the first because I at least laugh and enjoy a couple parts. The penguins make me laugh. The third one, if you guys haven't seen it, goes so far off the rails that it actually works as an actual better. I would actually call the third one a good movie.
Oh, wow.
But the thing is, okay, so it's fine and it's enjoyable and it's fun. And that first part, I think the Zimmer score, working with will.i.am, I think it's a better score than the first movie had. You've got, a better dramatic hook. But Jason, like you're talking about with the race stuff, which is not kid stuff, right?
No.
The first Madagascar, that pop culture stuff. Yeah, you've got Monsters versus Aliens, where the Stephen Colbert character, who the hell are kids aren't going to know who Stephen Colbert is? Why is he in that movie? But he has a part where he plays the full Axel F theme, and I remember sitting in the theater for that, going, "Who is this made for?" Right? But the first Madagascar, it has a joke. And you're talking about the race stuff not being appropriate, where they take a joke from American Beauty, a movie about a guy that falls in love with an underage high school girl and has a dream where he imagines her on a bed of roses as he's masturbating. And in Madagascar, they take it and they put Alex the lion on a bed of steaks, right? Which is maybe the most inappropriate thing I've ever seen in a kid's movie. And I say this, watching this movie, I say this as a Jesus-loving man. What the fuck are you doing? Putting this joke in there. What are you doing? It's just, at least this movie doesn't have any of that. Oh my gosh, it's just... Yeah.
Now, Robert, what do you say as a man who's rejected Jesus Christ?
Lions want to fuck steaks. Isn't that common knowledge? I just assume that we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
That's right.
Is there anything left to say about...
I like when Alex misinterprets and he does like a West Side Story style dance fight at one point when they're like during the challenge. I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
I will also say that DreamWorks Animation has, like Wild Robot, has some pretty amazing movies that can stand toe to toe with Disney. Mm-hmm. But the thing with Madagascar too, it's mid tier. It's not offensive, but it's just there. It's not great, but there are worse ways to spend your time.
I've always felt like these movies were like specifically made for like 6-year-olds.
Yeah, that's
right. Am I wrong?
Yeah. Nope, you're not wrong.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Like it's a lot of constant movement to keep kids' attention to, okay, don't look away. Like the troll movies are kind of, they're like that, but for 6-year-olds who were raised on TikTok.
Right. Yeah.
Not as opposed to 6-year-olds that were raised on not even YouTube back here, but like I guess
Saturday morning cartoons. Yeah.
Sorry, Nickelodeon or something like that. Yeah.
Encyclopedia
Cartoon
Britannica.
Network. Yeah. Well, that's us, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's why we had movies about mice detectives and sad Russian immigrant mice who are Jews who are fleeing the Holocaust. They're like,
Rob,
these kids are
Bluth slander again.
These kids are raised on encyclopedias. Make it about animal experimentation, turning that little woman mouse into a psychic and kill her kids. Okay. All right. And then like our kids got this. How the mighty have fallen. Anything left to say?
I have this as a 6. It's also my 4th of the week.
Yeah, I had it at a 6.2, only because I had Caspian at a 6.1. And it's my number 4.
I think we've been in agreement this entire time.
Yeah.
But let's find out if that's true during a little thing we go recap. All right, coming in dead last for me is Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian, 6 out of 10. Number 4 is Madagascar 2, Escape to Africa, 6.5 out of 10. Number 3, right in the middle, is Quantum of Solace, the best James Bond television series that will ever be made. Suck it, Bezos. And number 2 is Iron Man, the best Iron Man movie that'll ever be made until they multiverse it and put Tom Cruise in a fucking suit. What are we doing? Nothing matters anymore. Nothing matters anymore. Nothing matters anymore. Secret Wars. Put him in the fucking suit. Put it and make it practical. He'll demand it. Have Chris McQuarrie write all of his fucking lines. Drop him from a real plane. Make sure that suit has real rockets in it. And have him punch Robert Downey Jr. in the fucking face as Dr. Doom, and you will send me home happy. And then, because it's Secret Wars, you can put the real goddamn Mandarin in it. And I'm not talking about fucking Shang-Chi bullshit, whatever, where you cast a good actor to do it, then you go, I'm actually not that character at all either for the second time. Fuck you. Okay, 7.5 out of 10. And number 1, Wall-E, 8.5 out of 10. Stone Cold classic, even for a cynic like me.
Number 5, I have Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian at a 6.1. Number 4, Madagascar, Escape to Africa at 6.2. To see how close those were. Number 3, I had Quantum of Solace, very obviously middle of this list and middle of the Craig Bonds was 6.4. And number 2, I had Iron Man at an 8.1. And number 1, the easiest decision I've made this week, Wall-E with a 9.3.
So number 5, I've got Chronicles of Narnia, Prince whatever at a 5. I've got Madagascar, Escape to Africa, number 4 at a 6. Quantum of Solace, number 3 at a 6.5. Iron Man at a very solid 8.0. And my number 1, we're all in agreement, Wall-E, which is not the best Pixar movie, but I have it as a 9. It's pretty damn good.
All right. When you guys aren't here. Now, look, okay, I'm not going to deconstruct Robert. But when I listen to Back to Bluey or Franchise Detours, Robert is so upbeat and happy. And when I listen to Nostalgia Cast or Back to Bluey, Darren Lundberg is the same across the board. And he's the same when he comes on here. You're getting the same Lundberg no matter where you're at. The Lundberg on Blue Sky is the Lundberg before we hit record, which is the Lundberg on an episode. When Robert comes on Binge Movies, he's sullen, he's sad, he looks angry.
Did I look? I've been laughing and smiling and what?
Yeah, you should hear him off mic and Back to Bluey. He is really a downer.
Have I been that bad to you?
We'll discuss it off mic.
Okay, all right.
I don't know if this is the time or place.
Okay, all right. I feel awful. Because I listen and I go, wow. And I go on Robert's show and I go, this guy is a ray of sunshine in a dark and dreary world. And then he comes on, he's like, Madagascar 2. And where's the pep for Madagascar Escape to Africa?
These fucking lemurs.
Then the lemur starts fucking his fuck doll. And there's a whole subplot where he marries his fuck doll.
Yeah. Oh, God, we didn't even mention that.
I don't know if is it the movies of the 2000s? Is that what you're having a problem with?
It might be. If there is such a sullen streak, I think it's a lot of these movies are like the 2 that I watched for the first time for this episode. Not great, as we established. But it's also weirdly like the ones that are good. To your point earlier, Jason, like we're in a completely different landscape. Like I told Darren recently, like when we were talking about the early 2000s, the Spider-Mans, the Lord of the Rings, like real movies, like trying stuff, and now everything is sort of into content land, and it's a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah, I was not okay. So this is the postscript on this one. I gave the patrons over at patreon.com/binge movies, where we've launched a new series, Video Land, where I'm joined by a rotating guest of people like, hopefully in the near future, Robert Yaniz Jr. and DW Lundberg, to sit and provide live commentary to movies from one of our illustrious sections here at the video store. So if you're a big fan of going to the video store, maybe you're young and you miss that era, like most of the women I date, and you don't remember what it was like on a Friday night to go to the video store, pick out a random movie because the box looked kind of cool, and then sit there with your buddy or your brother, your sister, your dad, your mom, maybe by yourself, and go, what the fuck is this? Either in a good way or a bad way, Videoland is for you. Full episodes available to our franchisees, and the best of kind of short attention span versions for our clerks. And of course, we're still doing instant reactions for our video club members. You get them early and oftentimes extended. Okay. I put it up to them and I said, okay, I've done the 90s as a decade. Would you like me to do the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, or something completely different? Is there another decade you want me to look at, or you want me to do something different? And people voted, and they said, no, we want you to stick with the decade format. We really like that. It gives continuity to the seasons, and it's really interesting to see things evolve. And you've already talked about so many 80s movies. And 70s is okay, but the box office was different then, right? And so they're not movies that everybody around the world has seen. And we have international listeners who are like, some of these movies maybe never even made it to our country. Okay, fair enough. 2000s worldwide box office. If anything, it's even more worldwide. So it'll appeal to my entire audience. Appeals to kind of my demographic of listeners who tend to be in that age frame. So a lot of them are a little bit younger than me, and obviously we have a bunch who are older than me or same age as me. But there is this group that's just a notch below me. Okay, perfect. This makes perfect. I went into it with no trepidation whatsoever. I'd say about, what was it, Robert? 3 episodes in that we did this, like the third time we did together, by like 2003, I was like, oh no. Oh no. This is not a good decade for movies.
Yeah.
Your 2007 episode, I really thought you were going to quit. I thought you were going to be, I can't do this anymore. This is my last episode. That was your I Am Legend talk. That was a sign of, wow. Great.
And
episode.
Robert's been on
a lot of them.
Yeah, probably 50% of them, maybe. And he's we kind of got to the same point where he's like, I don't know how I can do this anymore. And then Kat, who's very kind of an upbeat person, was like, yeah, I don't know. Even the movies I thought were good, now that we revisit them, they don't really work anymore.
Yeah.
It's like all of this. It's all either you just watch it and you go, wow, we didn't know how good we had it.
Hindsight,
with these movies we thought were mediocre now look like the best thing you've ever seen visually.
Yeah.
Like if you put it in theaters today, it'd make $1 billion just on how it looks.
Yeah.
And then the movies that some of them we thought we liked are like, this doesn't work at all, because oftentimes they're now have become these franchises that for 20 plus years almost have been milked dry. We don't ever need another Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
No.
And it's kind of a shame because that first one felt special at the time. And it retrospectively doesn't anymore. It does by comparison, but it doesn't. It's just, you're just going, oh God, I get it. I've seen all of this.
Well, the question is, does Madagascar have a Puss in Boots: The Last Wish in it? Is there any kind of way of rebranding that franchise? Because that one took me by surprise, where I was over Shrek, that anything having to do with that universe.
Very true.
And then that came out. I was like, well, damn, now Shrek 5 is coming. And
you're talking sincere storytelling and sincere actual story with meaning.
I like the first Puss in Boots, but Last Wish is better.
Yes.
Yeah.
The first Puss in Boots is actually better than some of the Shreks, I will say.
It is.
Well, yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. That's a great question. Is there a way that you could do a Madagascar that is just a Puss in Boots level, let alone Last Wish, which is like an actual movie?
It would probably be a King Julian movie that's like a thinly veiled animated remake of The Apprentice. That's what
yeah.
Wow, how Wally got us thinking about certain mind-blowing things. It's doing the same thing to Madagascar. I'm going to have to change my score. Madagascar.
Where can we find you? Dying Days of Democracy in America. Robert?
So I have Crooked Table Productions. We have Franchise Detours, where we believe no movie series travels in a straight line, and Close Watch, where we get to know our guests through the movies they love. Obviously, also Darren and I have Back to Bluey, which is now in season 3, and I want Jason to come to Back to Bluey and give us his feedback on that show, because we need more perspectives. As a person without children, I want to see if you actually think this show is garbage from your perspective, or if it's watchable. And you talk about Bluey for an hour, 30, 40 minutes, and not sound upbeat. I
Dotted line. Dotted
Yeah.
line, Jason. Sign it now. We will have you on.
I'll do it. I thought you guys covered the whole show. It's over, right?
Not even
No, the
close.
show's over. Isn't the show over?
It is.
It's-
But it lives on in our hearts. It'll live
But
on
didn't
in our
you cover all the episodes already?
Nope.
hearts.
Oh, I thought
Not
you
even.
had.
No, don't try and lemur your way out of this. We're making it happen.
Now, let me ask you a question, Robert.
Yeah.
Is the Crooked and Crooked table because you are secretly funded by George Soros and Crooked Hillary?
Now it comes out.
no.
Now it comes out.
Now it's coming out. And Lundberg, you appear in a show called Back to Bluey.
I do.
Are you talking about the Democrat Party? Are you trying to get people to go back to liberalism?
It's our MAGA. Back to Bluey.
Oh no.
Put it on the Bluey.
Oh no.
Oh, okay. All right. Till next time, everybody. Binge on!